This video will go through each episode of A Game of Thrones Season 1 in vertical footage to showcase why the book was better and what was left out because it was too dark. We'll use vertical footage to remind you of what happened in the TV show and artwork to show you why the book was better. For example, Robert nearly killed Joffrey as a boy after Joffrey skinned a cat alive, and Robert even told Ned that he didn't want his son to be king after him. Three brothers of the Night's Watch, Will, Garrett, and Waldemar Royce, set out from the Wall to investigate rumors of wildlings in the haunted forest located to the north, beyond the Wall. Will, the most skilled scout among them, stumbles upon a group of wildling bodies mutilated and arranged in a bizarre, ritualistic manner on the forest floor. He also discovers a deceased wildling girl pinned to a tree. Upon returning to the group, Will recounts his findings. Despite Garrett's suggestion that they return to Castle Black to inform the Lord Commander, Jorah Mormont, of the situation, so Waldemar insists on personally inspecting the corpses to determine the cause of death. However, when they arrive at the scene, the bodies have vanished. While Will searches for clues, Garrett uncovers a bloody piece of clothing buried in the snow. Their investigation is abruptly halted when a towering humanoid figure with piercing blue eyes, a White Walker, appears and effortlessly kills Sir Waldemar. Garrett tries to flee but is swiftly caught and slain. To Will's horror, he witnesses the reanimated wildling girl with glowing blue eyes and witnesses Garrett's demise with the White Walker callously tossing his severed head at Will's feet. The White Walker's assault in the book occurs after a long journey to the north of the Wall, but in the TV show, it takes place in a nearby forest on the same day the Rangers depart from Castle Black. In the show, Will stumbles upon the gruesome scene of the Wildlings massacre, with their bodies showing signs of brutalization. On the other hand, in the book, the bodies seem as though they are merely sleeping, like frozen to death. There is no mention in the book of any deliberate arrangement of the wildlings' corpses. In the TV series, Garrett are the first to encounter the White Walkers, while Will is off exploring the surrounding area. In contrast, the books have Garrett remain behind to guard the horses at a short distance. Will climbs a tree to observe the wildlings, and Waldemar Royce is left alone beneath the tree to confront the White Walkers. The appearance of the White Walkers differs between the TV series and the book. In the book, they are described as having white skin and wearing reflective light armor. On the other hand, in the TV series, they have frozen grey skin, dark hair, and a savage countenance resembling a skull. Additionally, the armor they wear in later seasons is black and non-reflective. In the television adaptation, only two White Walkers make an appearance, and Waldemar is taken by surprise and killed by one of them. In the book version, the others, or White Walkers, consisting of at least 5 individuals, confront Waldemar Royce. Waldemar engages in a fierce battle with one of the White Walkers before ultimately meeting his demise at the hands of the group. Waldemar Royce undergoes a transformation into a White after his death. Meanwhile, Garrett becomes the second victim of the White Walkers in the TV series, while Will manages to escape their clutches. Furthermore, in the books, Will is strangled by the reanimated corpse, while Garrett evades capture but is later executed by Eddard Stark for desertion. After a while, Will is running in fear to the south of the Wall instead of returning to Castle Black to warn them about the White Walker danger. He is captured by riders loyal to House Stark and brought before Lord Eddard Stark. Meanwhile, Lord Eddard Ned Stark is in Winterfell with his family. Ned and Catelyn observe their 10-year-old son, Bran Stark, practicing archery with the help of Robb Stark, their eldest son, and Jon Snow, Ned's illegitimate son, both aged 17. Robb and Jon can't contain their laughter when Bran's arrow misses the target again, but Ned playfully scolds them and encourages Bran to keep trying. The youngest son, 6-year-old Rickon Stark, watches his brothers while Arya Stark, the youngest daughter at 11, shows off her archery skills by hitting Bran's target before him. This leads to a playful chase between Bran and Arya, with Ned, Catelyn, Robb, and Jon joining in the laughter. The events of the TV series take place 17 years after the conclusion of Robert's rebellion. In contrast, the books start 14 years later, resulting in the Stark children being older than their book counterparts. Robb and Jon are 17 instead of 14. Bran is 10 instead of 7, and Rickon is 6 instead of 3. Sansa is 13 instead of 11, and Arya is 11 instead of 9. Joffrey is 16 instead of 12, Marcella is 11 instead of 8, Tommen is 10 instead of 7, and Daenerys is 16 instead of 13. Arya in the novels lacks skills in archery, as she has never experienced shooting an arrow. On the other hand, Bran has received sword-fighting lessons from Sir Roderick Castle and manages to emerge victorious against Tommen in a friendly combat practice. The joyful moment is interrupted when Ned receives news about a deserter from the Night's Watch being discovered. The law dictates that Will, as a deserter from the Watch, is considered an oathbreaker and faces execution. Ned brings 3 of his sons, Robb, Jon, and Bran, to witness the event, as it is a stark tradition for sons to participate in executions. Also present are Ned's ward, Theon Greyjoy, Master-at-Arms, Roderick Castle, and Guard, Jory Castle. Will accepts his fate, but reveals to Ned about the Walkers and requests to inform his mother. Ned personally carries out the execution using the Valyrian blade, Ice. Young Bran observes his first execution without hesitation, earning praise from Jon. Ned explains to Bran the importance of the person passing the sentence carrying out the punishment. When Bran questions Ned about Will's warnings of White Walkers, Ned dismisses it as nonsense, claiming they have disappeared long ago. The group then departs for Winterfell. In the book, Ned Stark does not disclose the deserter's words to Bran, but focuses solely on the act of execution. Later on, Ned confides in Catelyn that the deserter appeared to be half-mad, with an unfathomable fear that rendered him impervious to reason. In the book, Eddard shares with Bran the importance of the person who gives the death sentence also being the one to carry it out. He believes that if one is to take a life, they should have the courage to listen to the final words of the condemned. A ruler who delegates such tasks to paid executioners may forget the cost of human life. While journeying back to the castle, the group stumbles upon a lifeless stag lying on the road, its insides exposed. Theon speculates that a mountain lion may have been the culprit, but Eddard dismisses the idea as there are none in the vicinity. Their investigation leads them to a rare sight, a deceased female direwolf, with a broken stag antler lodged in her throat. The direwolf had perished after giving birth, leaving behind 5 vulnerable pups seeking warmth beside her. The lifeless deer in the shot was not a mere prop, it was a genuine carcass having perished 2 days prior and now in a state of decomposition. The actors vividly remember the nauseating experience of filming that particular scene. Eddard suggests putting the pups out of their misery to prevent them from suffering starvation, but Jon Snow persuades his father to see it as a sign. The direwolf symbolizes House Stark, and Eddard has 5 legitimate children. Bran watches pleadingly as Eddard reluctantly agrees, under the condition that they raise and care for the pups themselves. Each pup's fate will be the responsibility of its owner, with a proper burial if one passes away. Just before departing, Jon discovers a 6th pup, an albino runt of the litter. Theon jests that this one belongs to Jon, yet Jon embraces the additional pup with open arms. The producers of the television series initially thought about using real wolves. However, this idea was rejected due to the potential dangers and the fact that wolves are prohibited in the United Kingdom where the show is being filmed. Instead, the Northern Inuit breed was selected for its wolf-like appearance and lovable qualities. In the books, Winterfell is covered in snow, but there is no snow in the TV series. There is no dead stag in the books, and the direwolf pups are discovered in deep snow. In King's Landing, the capital of the 7 Kingdoms, the bells toll in honor of Lord Jon Arryn's passing, the Hand of the King. Queen Cersei Lannister observes as the Silent Sisters prepare his body for burial. She fears that Jon Arryn has uncovered dangerous secrets and may have shared them with others. Cersei confides in her twin brother, Sir Jaime Lannister of the Kingsguard, who assures her not to fret, as if the king knows the truth, they would have been executed already. She suggests he takes on the role of the new Hand of the King, but Jaime declines, citing the workload as too burdensome. Cersei accuses him of not taking things seriously, Certain scenes in King's Landing featuring Cersei Lannister, Jaime Lannister, and the deceased Jon Arryn are not present in the books. In the book, Jaime and Cersei's conversation regarding Jon Arryn's death occurs at Winterfell in the tower when Bran witnesses them together. A raven arrives at Winterfell carrying the tragic news of Jon Arryn's passing. Lady Catelyn Stark delivers the message to Eddard, who was deeply saddened by the loss as Arryn had been like a father to him during his time at the Eyrie. Catelyn also reveals that King Robert Baratheon and his entourage are on the way to Winterfell. Eddard understands that Robert intends to appoint him as the new head of the king in place of Jon Arryn. Despite his duty to the realm, Eddard contemplates rejecting the offer as he believes his place is with his family at Winterfell. The transformation of the Winterfell courtyard for the Game of Thrones sets required significant effort, especially considering it was previously used as a parking lot and gift shop just days before filming began. In the coming weeks, the Stark siblings become accustomed to their rapidly growing direwolves. Robb chooses to name his Greywind, Sansa opts for Lady, and Arya selects Nymeria in honor of a legendary warrior queen. Jon decides on Ghost due to its white fur and eerie quietness, while Bran settles on Summer, and Rickon, at just 6 years old, names his wolf Shaggy Dog. Sophie Turner, who portrays Sansa in the show, decided to officially adopt Lady as her own pet once filming for the first season concluded and live animals were no longer used on set, being replaced by CGI. During this time, Bran's mother catches him climbing the castle rooftops as a royal party approaches. Though he promises to cease this dangerous activity, she sees through his deceit. Winterfell prepares for the arrival of guests, with Catelyn Stark ensuring Tyrion Lannister, known for his love of reading, has an ample supply of candles. Meanwhile, the young men of the household groom themselves and gossip about the Queen, rumoured to be a great beauty. Winterfell's courtyard is filled with people eagerly waiting for the royal party to arrive. Arya, although late, makes her presence known by being talkative and not showing the expected level of respect. King Robert makes a grand entrance with his knights, while Queen Cersei arrives in a large wheelhouse. Lord Eddard introduces his household to the king, and the two men greet each other warmly. King Robert expresses his desire to visit the crypts and pay his respects to Eddard's deceased sister, Lyanna, much to the annoyance of Queen Cersei. The book narrates the arrival of the royal party through Eddard's perspective, omitting scenes such as Catelyn and Luwin preparing for the feast, Robb, Theon, and Jon getting ready with haircuts, Bran spotting the royal party atop the wall, Catelyn reprimanding Bran for climbing the wall, Arya observing the royal party's arrival, House Stark and their followers lining up to welcome the royal guests, and Arya's playful antics. The moment when all the residents of Winterfell come together to greet Robert Baratheon is the sole instance throughout the series where every member of the Stark family is depicted in one scene. Furthermore, in the book, Cersei and the royal children travel in an extravagant wheelhouse described as pulled by 40 heavy draft horses and too wide to pass through the castle gate, forcing the queen to disembark outside and walk into the castle. In contrast, the series portrays a smaller wheelhouse. After King Robert and Lord Eddard leaves, Queen Cersei sends Jaime to find their brother Tyrion, who is known as the Imp, due to his dwarfism. Tyrion is found at a brothel in the nearby town, enjoying the company of a prostitute named Ross. Jaime informs Tyrion that he is needed at the feast that night and has arranged for 3 more prostitutes to keep him entertained. Throughout the novels, Tyrion Lannister is depicted as having short legs, a large forehead, a flattened face, and eyes of varying hues. He moves with a distinctive waddle. Initially, the character was meant to have a beard, but actor Peter Dinklage argued against it, believing that a bearded dwarf was too cliché. Eventually, he agreed to allow Tyrion to grow a beard in the later seasons. Robert formally extends the offer to Eddard to become the Hand of the King. Eddard requests some time to think it over. Robert agrees, but sweetens the deal by proposing a marriage between his son Joffrey and Eddard's daughter Sansa. Moreover, the dynamics surrounding Ned's acceptance of the Hand of the King position vary between the book and the show. While Catelyn persuades Ned to take the role in the novel, fearing Robert's reaction to a refusal, she pleads with him to decline the offer in the televised version. In the crypts, King Robert offers his prayers at the tomb of Lyanna Stark, whom he had been betrothed to before she was supposedly kidnapped by Prince Rhaegar Targaryen. Lyanna's death has haunted Robert, as he confesses to Eddard that he dreams of killing Rhaegar every night. Eddard reminds Robert that the Targaryen house has been destroyed, but Robert cryptically replies, "Not all of them." The novels do not depict Robert placing a feather on Lyanna's statue, as the showrunners clarified that the feather symbolized an exotic bird that Robert had given to Lyanna as a gift. In the books, Robert first visits Lyanna's tomb with Eddard and then asks Eddard to be his hand of the king. However, in the TV series, these events are shown in reversed order. In the bustling free city of Pentos, situated across the narrow sea, Viserys and Daenerys Targaryen reside under the care of Magister Illyroy Mopatis. The appearance of Illyroy Mopatis differs between the TV series and the books. In the series, he is portrayed as overweight with dark brown hair and a grey flecked beard, while in the books, he is described as morbidly obese with gold-oiled hair and a yellow forked beard. Viserys has arranged for Daenerys, also known as Dany, to be married to Khal Drogo, the fierce leader of a Dothraki horde consisting of 40,000 warriors. Khal Drogo's appearance deviates slightly from his description in the books. In the original story, he is portrayed with a long mustache adorned with rings and numerous bells woven into his lengthy braid. However, in the TV series, he sports a beard with just one ring and lacks the distinctive bells in his hair. Drogo promises to provide Viserys with the military force required to reclaim the Iron Throne. Viserys prepares Daenerys for her meeting with the Khal, commenting on her beauty and making inappropriate advances towards her. Daenerys, feeling uncomfortable, silently endures his actions and proceeds to bathe in scalding hot water, much to the distress of her maid. As Daenerys steps into the bath, a servant cautions her about the scalding water, but Daenerys appears unfazed. Shortly after, Drogo arrives at Illyroy's estate, and after briefly observing Daenerys, departs without dismounting from his horse. Viserys grows anxious, but Illyroy assures him that if Drogo did not approve of Daenerys, they would have been informed. Many avid readers of the book series had a major complaint when the television adaptation was released: the absence of the Targaryens' iconic violet eyes. While actors Emilia Clarke and Harry Lloyd initially tried to use violet contact lenses for their roles, the lenses proved to be more of a hindrance than a help. Not only did they distract the actors during filming, but they also failed to achieve the desired effect. As a result, the decision was made to forego the use of the violet contact lenses altogether. Later, Illyroy and Viserys discussed their plans to return to Westeros, with Viserys eagerly inquiring about the impending wedding. Daenerys, however, expresses her discontent with the arrangement and boldly declares her refusal to marry Drogo. Despite her protests, Viserys remains adamant that she will wed Drogo to secure his claim to the throne, even going as far as threatening to allow her to be violated by Drogo's entire horde if necessary. A lavish feast is thrown to celebrate, where Cersei and Catelyn exchange friendly words. Cersei takes a particular interest in Sansa, believing she will be a popular figure at court. Meanwhile, Jon Snow practices his sword fighting outside the feast, feeling resentful that Catelyn objected to his presence as a bastard. His uncle Benjen Stark, the first ranger of the Night's Watch, arrives, and Jon asks to accompany him back to the Wall. However, in the books, he is allowed to attend the feast, but is not seated at the royal table. Instead, he sits with a group of squires and other boys of noble birth, where he indulges in alcohol and ends up getting very intoxicated. This leads to a heated argument with his uncle Benjen, who advises him to wait and have some illegitimate children of his own before making the decision to join the Night's Watch. Angered by his uncle's words, Jon storms outside and encounters Tyrion. This scene unfolds similarly in the unaired pilot, with both Jon and Tyrion find themselves outside, intoxicated. It is during this encounter that Tyrion also meets Jon's direwolf, Ghost. Tyrion Lannister joins the gathering and advises Jon to toughen up and not take offense so easily to taunts about his illegitimacy. When Jon challenges Tyrion, he cryptically remarks that all dwarves are bastards in their father's eyes. In the series, the majority of married women adopt their husband's surname, such as Catelyn and Lysa Tully, who now go by Stark and Arryn respectively. However, Cersei Lannister, who is wed to King Robert Baratheon, has chosen not to do so. The rationale behind this decision lies in the tradition that the name of the ruling house holding the Iron Throne can only be passed down through bloodline and not through marriage. Therefore, even if Sansa were to marry Joffrey, she would still retain her maiden name, Stark, instead of becoming a Baratheon. There is an extra conversation between Catelyn and Sansa in the TV series that introduces Sansa's personality. In the books, Sansa is briefly mentioned at the feast, and her personality is further revealed at the Trident. The entrance of the royal family and House Stark to the feast is described in the book, but omitted in the TV series. In the book, Benjen Stark enters the feast with the royal family and other members of House Stark, but in the TV series, he arrives late. During the night, Eddard and Catelyn receive a letter from Lady Lysa Arryn, Catelyn's sister and widow of Jon Arryn. The letter accuses the Lannisters of murdering Jon Arryn and plotting against King Robert. Maester Luwin advises Eddard to accept the role of Hand to investigate these claims and protect the king. Reluctantly, Eddard agrees and sets off with Robert for a hunting trip, leaving Winterfell behind. In the novel, when Maester Luwin enters Eddard's chamber, Catelyn is unclothed. She emerges from bed without attire, noting that it is inconsequential as Luwin assisted in the birth of all her children. However, in the televised adaptation, she is garbed in a nightgown. The letter from Lysa Arryn lacks encryption in the TV series and is brought by a messenger. In contrast, the written message is coded in the book, concealed in a box with a false bottom, and mysteriously left in Luwin's quarters by an unknown individual. Images from the production reveal that the prop letter was indeed inscribed in a symbolic code devised for the show, but this aspect was excluded in the final edit of the episode. Daenerys weds Khal Drogo in a lavish ceremony, where the festivities are grand. Some individuals perish in spontaneous combat, which Illyroy deems as a positive omen. A Dothraki wedding without at least 3 deaths is considered a boring event. The newlyweds are bestowed with numerous gifts, but 2 stand out to Dany. The first is a collection of books, filled with tales and melodies from the 7 kingdoms, gifted by Ser Jorah Mormont, an exiled knight of House Mormont. Ser Jorah pledges loyalty to Viserys as king, and offers his assistance and counsel, which is gladly accepted. Jorah Mormont is described in the books as bold, stocky, hairy, and unattractive, although strong and fit. The second gift is a chest containing 3 exquisite scaly stones. Illyroy claims these are dragon eggs from the Shadowlands beyond Ashai that are petrified over time. Dany feels a strange connection to the eggs, but dismisses it for the time being. Drogo presents Daenerys with a stunning white mare as his gift. In the novel, Daenerys' horse is described as grey with a mane resembling silver smoke, differing from the white mare depicted in the show. The wedding scene of Daenerys and Drogo occurs earlier in the TV adaptation compared to the book. Jorah is introduced in this particular scene instead of in Daenerys' first POV chapter. In the book, Daenerys, Viserys, and Illyroy visit Drogo's manse in Pentos, and partake in a lavish celebration to honor the engagement of Drogo and Daenerys. A diverse array of individuals attend this grand event, including guests from various free cities, several cows, and the introduction of Jorah Mormont. It is common knowledge among fans of Game of Thrones that Jason Momoa tried out for the part of Khal Drogo by performing a Mari Haka, a traditional war dance originating from the Mari people of New Zealand. The Dothraki people draw inspiration from various nomadic horseback riding cultures throughout history, including the Huns, Mongols, and Native Americans. The term Dothraki can be loosely interpreted as riders in their unique language, which was meticulously crafted by linguistic expert David J. Peterson. The initial attempts by the show's writers to create a fictional language fell short of authenticity, prompting Peterson to develop a new language from scratch. In total, Peterson crafted around 4,000 unique words for the Dothraki language, each serving a specific purpose within their society. Viserys urges his sister to please Drogo. The couple ride to the shore and consummate their union on the beach at sunset. Daenerys appears visibly distressed and fearful. In the book, Drogo displays tenderness and sensitivity toward Daenerys, awaiting her consent before consummating their marriage. However, this scene is altered in the TV series, with Drogo proceeding without her explicit agreement, causing Daenerys distress. While exploring the castle, Bran witnesses Cersei and Jaime engaging in an intimate act. Cersei catches sight of Bran and alerts Jaime, who then pushes Bran out of the window upon realizing he had been seen. Furthermore, the act of Jaime pushing Bran from the window is executed with his right hand in the book, but with his left hand in the show. The intention of taking Bran to King's Landing prior to his injury, as planned by Eddard in the book, is omitted from the episode. Lena Headey was expecting a child during the production of this episode, leading to creative ways of hiding her pregnancy on screen. Viewers may notice her frequently covered in furs, positioned sitting or standing strategically, or featured in close-up shots to mask her growing belly. Additionally, the encounter between Cersei and Jaime in the tower differs from the two mediums. The physical positioning of the characters during Bran's observation also varies. Cersei stands against a wall with a man in front of her in the book, while in the show she is on all fours with Jaime behind her. Notably, a body double is utilized for the televised scene. In Winterfell, Tyrion Lannister awakens groggy and covered in grime in the Stark family's dog enclosure, greeted by his nephew, Prince Joffrey Baratheon, who taunts him. Despite his state, Tyrion demands that Joffrey show some respect to Lord and Lady Stark after Bran Stark's accident. However, Joffrey scoffs at the notion, prompting Tyrion to swiftly strike him across the face multiple times. Shocked and speechless, Joffrey hastily retreats from the scene. In the book, Tyrion chooses not to rest in the dog pen. Instead, he remains awake throughout the night within the confines of the library, foregoing sleep altogether. As dawn breaks, he emerges from the library only to unexpectedly come face to face with Joffrey and Sandor Clegane. Afterwards, Tyrion joins his family for breakfast and reveals his plan to journey north to visit the Wall before returning to King's Landing. He shares the news that Bran is expected to survive, observing the tense reactions of Cersei and Jaime. Tyrion's sibling asks him if he still plans to ride to the Wall, in which he does. Tyrion mentions how impressive the Wall will be to see, and tries to spook his sister's children by mentioning the evil creatures such as White Walkers he might encounter. After declaring he hopes to urinate off the edge of the world, Cersei says the children shouldn't listen to such filth and leaves. Once she and the children are gone, Jaime inquires about the Stark boy and asserts that he'd prefer a good clean death rather than living as a crippled grotesque. Speaking for the grotesques, Tyrion replies, "I'd have to disagree. I hope the boy does wake. I'd be very interested to hear what he has to say." This makes Jaime wonder whose side Tyrion is on, but Tyrion tells him that he wounds him, and that he loves his family. Cersei pays a visit to Catelyn Stark, who is keeping watch over her son, and shares the heartbreaking news that her own firstborn, a handsome boy with dark hair, succumbed to a fever. She expresses the pain she and Robert felt, despite their prayers and tears being in vain. Cersei humbly offers to pray for Bran's recovery, holding on to hope that the gods will be more merciful this time around. In the book, Cersei confesses to Ned that she never carried any of Robert's children to term, and had terminated one pregnancy without his knowledge. Robert remained oblivious to both the pregnancy and the subsequent abortion. Jon Snow requested the blacksmith of Winterfell, Meeken, to create a slender sword for his sister Arya. Jaime Lannister approaches him at the forge. He shakes Snow's hand and sneers while thanking him for protecting the realm against White Walkers and whatnot. Jon shakes off the insult. Jaime doesn't do this in the book, and it's just the show trying to make you not like Jaime. Arya is thrilled with the gift and affectionately names it Needle. Jon imparts some wisdom to Arya on how to wield the weapon effectively. Stick them with the pointy end. He encourages Arya to practice using Needle whenever she has the opportunity, and they share a warm embrace. Jon then visits his brother Bran, who is still in a coma, to bid him a heartfelt farewell. He plants a gentle kiss on Bran's forehead before leaving. However, Catelyn glares at Jon the whole time as he says his goodbye to Bran. Eddard, Jon's father, also says his goodbyes to his son and a sorrowful Catelyn. However, Catelyn accuses Ned of leaving her again, and when he left during Robert's rebellion, he came back with another woman's child. And he also came back with Theon Greyjoy after the second time he left during the Greyjoy Rebellion. As Jon prepares to depart, he shared a hug with his brother Robb, both hoping for a reunion in the near future. In the episode, Catelyn displays open animosity towards Jon as he comes to bid farewell to Bran. She makes it clear that she wishes for him to depart. In the books, however, her final words to Jon are haunting. "It ought to have been you." After bidding farewell at Winterfell, Jon, Tyrion, and Benjen Stark head towards the Wall in the north, while Eddard, Arya, Sansa, and the royal entourage journey south to King's Landing. Before parting ways, Eddard reassures Jon, saying, "You may not bear my name, but you are of Stark blood." Ned also vows to reveal the truth about Jon's mother when they reunite in the future. Jon has never been told who his birth mother is. The Dothraki horde led by Khal Drogo has departed Pentos and is making their way towards the east. They are venturing beyond the Free Cities and into the vast plains of the Dothraki Sea, which the nomadic warriors considered their homeland. Viserys Targaryen is also traveling with the Khalasar, intending to remain by Drogo's side until he fulfills his promise to provide him with an army for conquering Westeros. Despite Ser Jorah Mormont's advice against it, Mormont reveals to Viserys that he angered Eddard Stark, his former liege lord, by selling poachers into slavery. Upon learning that Eddard intended to execute him for this offense, Jorah fled to Essos. Viserys dismisses the threat, believing that such actions would go unpunished in his rule. Meanwhile, Daenerys struggles to adjust to a new role as Khaleesi, feeling intimidated by her new husband. Their first intimate encounter leaves her physically hurt, but Mormont offers her comfort, assuring her that it will get easier with time. In the books, Jorah discusses Eddard Stark with Daenerys, portraying a tone filled with bitterness and resentment. Heading towards the northern direction, Jon and Tyrion engage in a conversation where Tyrion reveals his habit of reading books to enhance his intellect, which he considers to be his most valuable asset. During their journey, they are accompanied by a group of new recruits who have chosen to join the Night's Watch to avoid being castrated. Tyrion enlightens Jon about the reality of the Night's Watch, stating that it is not the noble organization it used to be, romanticized with brave knights protecting the realm from the dangers beyond the Wall. He advises Jon not to believe in the fantastical tales of monsters, like Grumpkins and Snarks, that he heard from his childhood nurse. In the novel, Tyrion playfully mocks Jon by detailing the unsavory characters his new companions are, causing Jon to almost shed tears. In retaliation, Ghost forcefully pushes Tyrion to the floor. Jon intervenes and instructs Ghost to release Tyrion, but only after Tyrion politely requests for it. Several days later, while traveling on the King's Road towards the capital, King Robert Baratheon brings their journey to a stop to discuss some troubling news that has just come to light with Eddard. Robert reveals that his spies have uncovered information about Daenerys Targaryen's marriage to Khal Drogo, the leader of a fearsome Khalasar that reportedly consists of over 100,000 warriors. Eddard points out that the Dothraki do not possess ships to cross the narrow sea, but Robert remains anxious about the potential threat of war looming over the Seven Kingdoms. Curious about the mother of his illegitimate child, Robert inquires about Wyla to Eddard, who chooses to keep this information private. In the book, the discussion between Robert and Eddard regarding Daenerys occurs while they are riding, whereas in the series, it happens over breakfast. In the book, Jorah's role as an informer to the small council is unveiled to the reader during a particular scene, whereas in the series, this revelation is first introduced in the episode titled The Wolf and the Lion. In Winterfell, Catelyn's unwavering dedication to Bran's recovery is causing disruptions in the castle's operations. Robb steps in and collaborates with Maester Luwin to restore order. Amidst the chaos, a fire breaks out in the castle, serving as a diversion for an assassin to sneak in and target Bran. Catelyn bravely defends Bran against the assassin until Bran's faithful direwolf, Summer, rushes in and swiftly eliminates the threat by tearing out the assassin's throat. One night, Drogo enjoys a night of revelry with his warriors before retiring to his tent to visit Daenerys. He forcefully approaches her from behind, causing her discomfort, but she finds solace in her dragon eggs. Later, a curious Daenerys inquires with her handmaidens about the existence of dragons in the east. While most deny such claims, Doree shares a tale of how there were once 2 moons in the sky, one shattered like an egg near the sun, releasing countless dragons into the world. Despite the skepticism from her Dothraki handmaidens, Irri and Jiki, who view the moon as a goddess and wife to the sun, Daenerys remains intrigued by the ancient story. Daenerys consults with her handmaiden Doree for guidance on how to satisfy Drogo in bed and earn his respect. Doree advises Daenerys to not view herself as a slave and to approach their intimate moments with confidence. Encouraged by Doree's words, Daenerys bravely puts her advice into practice and is pleasantly surprised by Drogo's positive response, especially when she combines her physical actions with speaking the Dothraki language to him. Daenerys' interaction with her handmaidens, Doree, Jiki, and Irri, occurs earlier in the series than in the books. The scene depicting her efforts to please Drogo is also portrayed earlier in the series. Unlike in the books, where certain interactions are merely implied, the show explicitly shows Daenerys' relationship with Doree. Additionally, while Doree is described as having shiny blonde hair in the books, she is depicted with brown hair in the series. Upon reaching the wall, they are greeted by Benjen, and Tyrion is visibly impressed by the sheer magnitude of the structure. As per the author George R.R. Martin, the inspiration behind the wall in his fictional world was drawn from Hadrian's Wall in northern England. While Hadrian's Wall was smaller in size, 73 miles wide, 12 feet tall, compared to the wall in the book, 300 miles wide, 700 feet tall, both served the common purpose of defending the region from the northern invasions. Hadrian's Wall featured forts placed at regular intervals along its length, where soldiers from across England were stationed to guard against attacks from barbaric tribes. In Winterfell, Catelyn visits the tower where Bran had his fall and discovers a single strand of blonde hair lying on the ground. She gathers Robb, Theon, Luwin, and Roderick Castle to share her suspicions that the Lannisters may have been behind the attempt on Bran's life, fearing he saw something important in the tower. While Robb and Theon are ready for retaliation, Luwin advises caution. Catelyn decides it is crucial for Ned to be informed of the situation and plans to journey south to King's Landing to meet with him. So Roderick accompanies Catelyn on her journey, while Robb stays behind in Winterfell to oversee the castle in her absence. In the book, Catelyn does not harbour suspicion towards the Lannisters for Bran's accident, nor does she question their allegiance to the crown. Instead, she points the finger at Jaime, noting his absence from the hunting party on the day of Bran's fall, choosing to stay within the confines of the castle. The scene in the TV show where Catelyn, Robb, Theon, Roderick Castle, and Luwin gathered at Winterfell was set in the Godswood, rather than inside the castle. Travelling along the King's Road, the royal entourage arrives at the inn at the Crossroads, a well-known rest stop on the route leading south to the capital. The title of the episode, The King's Road, is a nod to the iconic highway stretching from Castle Black in the north to the bustling capital of King's Landing in the south, with Winterfell as one of the key stops along the way. Sandor Clegane, Prince Joffrey's bodyguard, introduces Sansa to Sir Ilyn Payne, the King's executioner, a fearsome-looking man who had his tongue removed by the Mad King years ago. The Hound reveals that Ilyn Payne, played by Wilko Johnson, has been mostly silent ever since the Mad King cruelly ripped out his tongue. Based on the novels and the Histories of Lore episode Mad King Aerys, it is known that Tywin Lannister served as Hand of the King to Aerys for 2 decades. However, the once strong bond between them began to deteriorate as Tywin's influence and power grew. Aerys, in an act of spite, rejected Tywin's proposal for a marriage alliance between their families by refusing to betroth Cersei to Rhaegar, and appointed Jaime to the Kingsguard, thus depriving Tywin on his rightful heir. In response to these affronts, Tywin angrily resigned from his position as Hand of the King 2 years before Aerys' demise. Following Tywin's departure, 4 individuals briefly took on the role of Hand: Owen Merriweather, John Cunnington, Carlton Chelstead, and Rosart. In the books, it is mentioned that Payne, who served as Tywin Lannister's chief guard, once made a joke implying that Tywin held more power and control over Westeros than the king himself. As a consequence, the king ordered Peña's tongue to be removed as punishment. Tywin, bound by his loyalty to the king, was unable to intervene. Following the Mad King's demise, Robert Baratheon appointed Peña as the royal executioner as a form of compensation for his loss of speech. Sansa's first appearance at the Trident is marked by her encounter with Ilyn Payne and the Hound. Notably, Barristan Selmy and Renly are absent from the Trident scene in the TV adaptation. In the show, Joffrey intervenes to protect Sansa from the unsettling encounter and suggests they take a stroll by the river. During their walk, they come across Arya practicing her swordsmanship with Mycah, the butcher's son. In the book, Sansa and Joffrey embark on a leisurely ride along the banks of the Trident, disappearing for an extended period before stumbling upon Arya. In the television series, their excursion is condensed to a brief stroll where they quickly locate Arya in close proximity. Joffrey feigns offense at Mycah, wielding a sword near his future bride's sister, and proceeds to cruelly slash Mycah's face with his sword, Lion's Tooth. In a moment of bravery, Arya strikes Joffrey on the head with a stick to defend her friend. Enraged by Arya's actions, Joffrey turns his aggression towards her, brandishing his sword menacingly. Before he can calm her, Arya's direwolf Nymeria leaps to her defense, biting Joffrey's arm. Mika flees in fear, and Arya tosses Lion's Tooth into the river before running away herself. Despite Sansa's attempt to aid Joffrey, he callously dismisses her, insisting that she leave him be. After Nymeria injures Joffrey, the book reveals Arya's recollection of this incident upon her return. The event transpires following Jory's discovery of Arya, where they both pelt Nymeria with stones. Arya, realizing that Nymeria would face punishment for injuring the prince, compels the direwolf to flee by hurling a rock at her. She is then brought before the king, who is frustrated that a minor disagreement has escalated into a serious situation, with his wife and new hand pointing fingers at each other's children. In the book, Renly, the king's brother, is in attendance when Joffrey and Arya are summoned before Robert. He can't help but chuckle when he learns that Joffrey was bested by a young girl, prompting Robert to dismiss him. In the television adaptation, Robert expresses his displeasure at Joffrey's defeat. In the show, Joffrey provides a deceitful version of events, and Cersei prompts Sansa to verify it. Caught in a difficult position, Sansa hesitates to contradict him, which angers Arya. In the novel, Sansa feigns ignorance of the events that transpired, prompting Arya to forcibly knock her to the ground and deliver a series of blows. In the show, the king decides that Ned will discipline Arya while he handles Joffrey, but Cersei insists that the direwolf be put down. When Nymeria cannot be located, Cersei maliciously demands that Sansa's direwolf lady be executed instead, and Robert reluctantly agrees, upsetting Sansa and further infuriating Arya. In the novel, Arya goes missing for a span of 4 days. Upon her discovery, she is brought before Robert, but the encounter does not occur at Castle Darry as depicted in the book. Instead, it unfolds at the inn at the crossroads. Interestingly, it is Jory who locates her in the story, not the Lannister soldiers. In the books, Robert agrees to Cersei's request to have Lady put down instead of Nymeria. Despite Ned's impassionate plea mentioning his late sister Lyanna, Robert angrily confronts Cersei. Ned urges Robb to carry out the task himself, but Robert walks away in shame. He later apologizes to Ned for Lady's death, admitting he knew Joffrey was lying about the situation. In the television adaptation, Ned objects to Lady's execution without mentioning Lyanna. Robert shows no empathy towards Lady or Sansa before the direwolf is killed, and he does not display any regret afterwards. During the filming of the first few episodes of the first season, Lena Headey was expecting a child. Filled with anger, Eddard takes matters into his own hands. In the books, the Hound callously throws Mycah's lifeless body at Ned Stark's feet. After confirming the identity of the deceased, Ned accuses the Hound of intentionally running the boy down. To Ned's shock, the Hound callously quips that the boy didn't put up much of a fight. In the television adaptation, Sandor Clegane remains stoic as he presents Mycah's body to Eddard Stark. When questioned about his role in the boy's death, Sandor coldly asserts that Mycah ran, but not fast enough. In a moment of grief and rage, Eddard puts an end to Lady's life with a swift dagger stroke. In a stark departure from the book's portrayal, Eddard carries out Lady's execution with a dagger instead of the greatsword Ice. Additionally, Lady was murdered prior to Eddard witnessing Micah's lifeless body in the novel. The sequence of events was altered in the television adaptation. In the books, Eddard commands for Lady's remains to be returned to the north to avoid Cersei or any of her followers from claiming her fur coat. Meanwhile, miles away, Bran suddenly regains consciousness. In the book, Bran doesn't encounter Robb or Summer immediately upon awakening. The chapter concludes with him simply opening his eyes. Bran does not experience any dreams involving the three-eyed raven before he wakes up for the first time. In the book, these dreams serve as what leads to him reawakening. However, in the series, he awakens when Lady is killed. Interestingly, the book does not suggest any correlation between Lady's demise and Bran's sudden awakening. Furthermore, the TV series delays the revelation of Summer's name, as well as Grey Wind's, until much later. Rickon's direwolf, Shaggy Dog, is also revealed much earlier in the book before Bran's fall, in contrast to the TV series where it was only unveiled towards the end of the season as Bran and Rickon search for Ned in the crypts. In episode 3, the royal entourage finally arrives at King's Landing. Lord Eddard, Ned Stark, is immediately summoned to a meeting of the King's Small Council and asked to change his attire, but he refuses. In the novels, when the royal steward calls for Ned to attend the Small Council meeting, Ned requests and receives suitable attire. However, in the television adaptation, the steward makes a suggestion regarding attire, which Ned chooses to disregard, which was a great change. In the novel, Ned's hand badge is depicted as a clasp fastening the cloak at the neck. However, in the TV series adaptation, it is portrayed as a brooch pinned to the chest. In the throne room, Ned comes face to face with Jaime Lannister. The phrase regarding the hand has been altered too. In the novel, it reads, "The king eats, the hand takes the shit." In the television show, it is now, "The king shits and the hand wipes." Jaime still harbors resentment towards Ned for deeming him dishonorable for slaying the Mad King who had murdered Ned's father and brother, and for daring to sit on the Iron Throne afterwards. The Iron Throne makes its debut appearance for the very first time. Jaime shows no remorse for his actions. Jaime and Ned briefly touch upon the tragic fate of Ned's father and brother, Rickard and Brandon, at the hands of Aerys. In George R.R. Martin's novel, A Clash of Kings, Jaime recounts in detail to Catelyn the gruesome manner in which the Mad King executed them. Rickard was cruelly suspended in his armor over a fire in the throne room, while Brandon, with his hands bound and a noose around his neck, struggled in vain to save his father. As Rickard suffered a slow and agonizing death by fire, Brandon inadvertently strangled himself in a desperate attempt to reach his sword. This tale, shared between Jaime and Ned, was initially part of the unaired pilot episode, featuring a haunting flashback of Brandon's demise. However, the scene was later moved to episode 3 of the series without the flashback, as the showrunners opted against incorporating such storytelling devices. Also, in the book, Jaime focuses on the presence of only the Lord Commander Gerald Hightower during the tragic event, rather than the large courtroom full of people who were also there. Ned then meets the council members, Lord Peter, Littlefinger, Baelish, the King's Master of Coin, and a childhood friend of Ned's wife. Grand Maester Pycelle, the King's advisory on scientific and academic matters. Lord Renly Baratheon, the King's younger brother and Master of Laws. And Varys, a eunuch who serves as the Master of Whisperers, overseeing the King's intelligence network. Julian Glover plays Grand Maester Pycelle, but originally the character was supposed to appear in the pilot episode and was portrayed by Roy Dotrice, a close friend of author George R.R. Martin, who had also narrated the audiobooks for A Song of Ice and Fire. However, due to health issues, Dotrice had to step down from the role before filming began. Consequently, Julian Glover was cast as a replacement at the last minute. Dotrice has later made a guest appearance in Season 2, playing Chief Pyromancer Helene. Varys informs Ned about the council members being aware of his recent challenges on the King's Road and expressing their hopes for Joffrey's swift recovery. In a somber tone, Ned remarks, "It's unfortunate that no one offered prayers for the butcher's boy," causing a noticeable disturbance in Varys' demeanor. Ned is shocked to discover that the kingdom is facing a massive debt of 6 million gold dragons, with half of it owed to Lord Tywin Lannister. The situation worsens when King Robert insists on hosting an extravagant tournament to commemorate Ned's new position. Despite his concerns, Ned decides to recommend cancelling the tournament to the king, although the council is uncertain if Robert will heed their advice. In the book, Littlefinger delves into the primary lenders of the crown aside from the Lannisters. These include the Iron Bank of Braavos, House Tyrell, various Tyroshi trading groups, and the Faith of the Seven. Queen Cersei is having a conversation with Joffrey regarding the recent incident on the river. She emphasizes to him that as the future king, he will have the power to dictate what is considered truth. Joffrey expresses concerns about political conflicts with the Starks and outlines his plan to increase their taxes, require them to support a standing army, and suppress any dissent by replacing them with a loyal figure like his great-uncle Kevan as Warden of the North. Cersei points out the challenges of trying to conquer the vast and untamed North through military force, suggesting that a king must rely on cunning rather than brute strength. She advises Joffrey to be kind to his betrothed Sansa Stark in order to prevent future complications, emphasizing the importance of avoiding unnecessary conflicts. She concludes by stating that anyone who was not aligned with them should be seen as an adversary. This scene isn't depicted in the book, since neither Joffrey nor Cersei are POV characters. Arya and Sansa are disagreeing about the situation involving Joffrey and her direwolf. Ned clarifies to Arya that Sansa was in a tough spot due to the king and queen's pressure. Arya is displeased with the circumstances, but Ned soothes her by permitting her to train with her sword, Needle. The morning meal at King's Landing is different, with Arya energetically stabbing the table. While Eddard joins the breakfast and presents Sansa with a doll, Septa Mordain opts not to accompany Arya to her chambers. During their conversation in the book, Ned refrains from defending Sansa's lies. Instead, he reveals that he knows Arya forced Nymeria to flee into the woods, and Arya accidentally reveals Jory helped her. In Winterfell, Bran awakens to find himself paralyzed from the waist down, unable to recall the events that led to his injury, and feeling deeply saddened. Old Nan shares a chilling tale about the White Walkers, who ride on deceased horses and hunt with spiders as large as hounds. She also speaks of winter, a season Bran has never experienced. In her stories, Old Nan often speaks of Sir Duncan the Tall, the main character in the Tales of Dunk and Egg penned by George R.R. Martin. These tales are set roughly 90 years prior to the events in the Song of Ice and Fire series. At Castle Black, the stronghold of the Night's Watch near the Wall, Jon Snow impresses Sir Alliser Thorne with his skills by defeating multiple fellow members in the training yard. Thorne is displeased with the lackluster performance of the others, but does not offer any praise to Jon, instead referring to him as Lord Snow, and the most competent amongst them. Observing the new recruits with Lord Commander Jorah Mormont, Tyrion notices Thorne's strict and unconventional methods. But Jorah is unconcerned, as he simply wants Thorne to shape the delinquents and outcasts into proper members of the Night's Watch. Alliser Thorne was born into a noble family that supported the Mad King during the rebellion led by Robert. Following their defeat, he was given the ultimatum of either joining the Night's Watch or facing execution. Despite climbing the ranks within the Watch over time, he harbors a deep resentment towards Ned Stark for his role in his taking the Black, which extends to Ned's illegitimate son, Jon Snow. Later, a group of recruits confront Jon. Jon finds himself trapped in the armory at the Wall, surrounded by Pip, Grenn, and Rast, who are ready to pummel him. Just when things seem dire, Tyrion stumbles upon the scene and skillfully convinces the others to stand down with a few menacing remarks. In the book, Jon causes a serious injury to Grenn by breaking his wrist. However, in the television adaptation, Jon inflicts a less severe injury by breaking Grenn's nose instead. Additionally, Jon engages in combat with multiple recruits in the show, whereas in the book, he only confronts Grenn. Tyrion then proceeds to subtly mock Jon, reminding him of the superior training of Sir Roderick compared to his fellow recruits. As Jon reflects on his supposed triumphs, Tyrion delivers the news of Bran's awakening back at Winterfell. This revelation leaves Jon stunned, contemplating the implications of his brother's return to consciousness. As per the original book, it was actually Donal Noye, the skilled blacksmith of Castle Black, and not Tyrion who reprimanded Jon Snow for embarrassing his fellow trainees. Donal Noye advised Jon to make friends with the other recruits instead. Numerous other members of the Night's Watch are not featured in the series, including Toad and Holder, while Daeron only has a small role. Some of Darion's lines are attributed to Pip instead. The initial scene at the Wall introduces 3 standout recruits: Grenn, Pip, and Rast. Rast receives more screen time than he does in the book. Additionally, there is an unidentified recruit with lengthy hair frequently seen alongside Rast, although his name remains undisclosed. Before heading back to King's Landing, Tyrion fulfills a long-held desire by climbing to the top of the Wall and relieving himself of the edge. He shares a moment of camaraderie with Jon Snow before departing with Yoren for the capital. Benjen Stark encounters Jon at the top of the Wall and informs him that he will be embarking on a mission into the Haunted Forest. He declines Jon's request to join him, explaining that Jon is not yet prepared and that one's social status and title hold no significance beyond the Wall. Every individual must prove themselves deserving of their accomplishments. Before setting off, Benjen bids farewell to Yoren, a comrade in the Night's Watch who recruits new members in the city. Yoren makes his first appearance in the TV series during a conversation with Tyrion at Castle Black, contrasting with the original introduction where he is seen with 2 others as Jon makes his journey to the Wall. Additionally, Benjen is also present in this particular scene. In the episode, Benjen also reprimands Tyrion for his lack of understanding about what lies north of the Wall, emphasizing that Tyrion lacks the authority to make claims about the unknown territory without first-hand experience. Benjen informs Jon that he will venture beyond the Wall as he is a ranger. In the world of the Night's Watch, there are 3 distinct orders: Rangers, Builders, and Stewards. Rangers serve as the eyes and ears beyond the Wall. Builders are responsible for the upkeep of the Wall and its structures, while the Stewards, the largest group, handle tasks such as cooking, butchering, and hunting. While Rangers are typically seen as the frontline defenders and attackers, all members of the Night's Watch undergo basic combat training in preparation for any potential conflicts. A new scene takes place at the Wall, featuring a heartfelt farewell between Benjen and Jon, while this emotional moment is only referenced in the books. Catelyn Stark and Sir Roderick make their way to King's Landing with hopes of entering the city discreetly. In the book, Catelyn and Sir Roderick reach King's Landing ahead of Ned Stark, arriving by sea from White Harbour. However, in the series, they travel on horseback along the King's Road and arrive after Ned. Their attempt is foiled when they are spotted by one of Littlefinger's associates. They are then escorted to a brothel owned by Littlefinger, where they encounter Lord Varys waiting for them. Varys mentions that one of his informants had informed him of their arrival. Catelyn is understandably upset by the treatment they have received, but decides to seek Littlefinger's help in identifying the individuals behind the assassination attempt on Bran. Littlefinger wastes no time in revealing that the dagger used by the assassin once belonged to him, but he lost it in a bet with Tyrion Lannister. In the book, Catelyn and Sir Roderick find themselves seeking shelter in a quaint old inn. While Sir Roderick goes off to meet with Aaron Santagar, Catelyn is unexpectedly escorted to Littlefinger by a group of Goldcloaks. This leads to Sir Roderick missing out on a crucial meeting between Catelyn, Varys, and Littlefinger. In the novel, Littlefinger arranges for Catelyn to meet him at the Red Keep rather than at one of his brothels, as depicted in the TV series, where it is explained that she would stand out too much at the Red Keep. As a result, Catelyn's displeased response and the mention of Back Alley Sally are absent from the original book version. In the second installment of the series, A Clash of Kings, Catelyn uncovers Littlefinger's deceit regarding the dagger. It was actually lost to Robert, not Tyrion. Moving forward to the third book, A Storm of Swords, Tyrion and Jaime piece together and conclude that Joffrey was the one who pilfered the dagger from Robert's possession. Joffrey then handed it to the hired assassin to use it in the attempted murder of Bran. All because he overheard Robert suggesting it would be a more compassionate act to end Bran's suffering. However, one theory suggests it was Mance Rayder, the king beyond the Wall, who told Jon when he first met him that he was at Winterfell for the feast with King Robert and that he brought a bag of silver with him. In the books, Robb Stark tells Catelyn that the Catspaw had a bag of silver on him as payment. So if Mance is a suspect, why would he do it? Well, to start a war between the Starks and Lannisters, so the Starks would march south, leaving the north unprotected. Because throughout history, every king beyond the wall has failed to reach south of the wall because of a Stark army waiting to defeat them. Littlefinger summons Ned to meet with his wife, but Ned is wary and confronts Littlefinger outside the brothel, demanding to know his intentions. Catelyn tells Ned to calm down. In the novel, Ned forcefully pushes Littlefinger against the wall and utters, "Brandon was too kind to you." While in the show, he says, "You're a funny man, a very funny man," before thrusting his dagger beneath Littlefinger's chin. It is ultimately Sir Roderick and not Catelyn who intervenes and prevents further violence. Catelyn shares important information with her husband, prompting him to swear to uncover the truth and expose the Lannisters to Robert. Littlefinger offers to support Ned in this mission, driven by his past affection for Catelyn. In Essos, Daenerys gives a sudden order for the Khalasar to stop, showcasing her increasing authority and power. In the novel, Daenerys commands the Khalasar to halt, not out of pity for the slaves, but due to her overwhelming admiration for the vast expanse of the Dothraki Sea. Viserys reacts poorly to being told what to do and threatens his sister, only to be swiftly restrained by Hikaru, a skilled Dothraki warrior wielding a whip. The tension is defused by Daenerys, and Viserys is humiliated by being forced to walk, a significant show of shame in Dothraki culture. Hikaru in the TV series appears to be a reflection of Jogo in the books. Also, it is Daenerys who forces Viserys to walk when he assaults her. Later, Irri reveals her suspicion that Daenerys is expecting a child. Daenerys informs Khal Drogo, predicting that it will be a boy, as they lie together in a vulnerable moment. Ser Jorah Mormont and Hikaru discuss the differences between Westerosi and Dothraki fighting styles. The heavily armored but slow knights with longswords designed for penetrating armor versus the agile horse rider warriors with lighter armor. Jorah acknowledges his own father as a renowned warrior, but admits his own past mistakes, confessing that he brought dishonor to his honorable father. Upon learning of Daenerys' pregnancy, Jorah decides to temporarily leave the group to travel to the free city of Cahor, promising to rejoin them before they reach Bas Dothrak. The pregnancy reveal scene with Jorah and Hikaru did not take place in the book, and was added to the show. Jaime and Cersei convene in secret to converse about Bran's sudden awakening. Jaime embraces his sister, reassuring her that the young boy will not reveal their secrets. And if he does, I'll kill him. Ned Stark, the king, the whole bloody lot of them, until you and I are the only people left in this world. In the third book, A Storm of Swords, there is a notable exchange between Jaime and Cersei regarding Bran's awakening. In a flashback experienced by Jaime, in the books, Lord Commander Barristan Selmy of the Kingsguard is depicted of being a part of the small council meeting, whereas he is noticeably absent in the TV adaptation. This change was made by the show writers to avoid revealing that Jorah was a spy. In Season 3, episode Kissed by Fire, there is a fabricated scene where Barristan mentions that he initially avoids council meetings as he is not fond of politics. In King's Landing, a show-only scene depicts a lively exchange between King Robert and Barristan Selmy. Playfully, Robert calls for Jaime Lannister to join them. They reminisce about their first kills. Lancel Lannister is also in the scene for comedic effect. Robert boasts about defeating a member of House Tarly during the Battle of Summerhall, but there is no record of any Tarly being present in that particular battle in the novels. It was actually during the Battle of Ashford that Robert first encountered and was defeated by the Tarlys. As per the book, Jaime Lannister did not betray the Mad King by stabbing him in the back. Instead, he slit his throat. In a later retelling in Kissed by Fire, it was revealed that Jaime initially stabbed Aerys in the back before ensuring his demise by slitting his throat. In the book, it is said that Jaime was just 15 years old when he joined the battle against the Kingswood Brotherhood. In recognition of his courage, Jaime was knighted on the battlefield by the esteemed Sir Arthur Dayne. Robert playfully probes Jaime about the circumstances surrounding Aery Targaryen's demise. he wonders aloud if the Mad King met his end pleading for mercy. However, Jaime responds with a chilling detachment, recounting how the ruler he once served met his fate, screaming the same chilling phrase he had been repeating until the start of the siege of King's Landing: "Burn them all." Nowhere in the books is there any reference to Aerys uttering the words, "burn them all." Later on, Tyrion engages in a conversation about the dangerous situation beyond the wall with Jorah Mormont and Maester Aemon. Jorah urgently requests Tyrion to use his influence at court to send more men to the Night's Watch, as they are severely understaffed. Aemon solemnly warns that the Stark's omen's words are true. Winter is coming, and it'll be more brutal than anyone can remember. He also hints that there may be more than just wildlings to worry about. There are whispers of White Walkers returning, though Tyrion remains skeptical of such supernatural tales. Nevertheless, he agrees to pass on the message to the Queen. In the show, Maester Aemon takes on more of Mormont's dialogue during the interaction with Tyrion. They talk about the declining numbers of new recruits. As a result, the Night's Watch has been forced to enlist outlawed criminals and disgraced noblemen to bolster their ranks. According to Maester Luwin in the Histories and Lore bonus feature on Season 1's Blu-ray, out of 19 castles along the wall, only 3 are still operational. Tywin Lannister goes as far as to refer to the wall as glorified penal colony. Ned has enlisted the expertise of Syrio Forel, a skilled swordmaster who once held the prestigious title of First Sword of Braavos, to instruct Arya in the art of sword fighting. Arya is filled with excitement as she embarks on her training, eagerly beginning the dance with Syrio. However, as Ned observes their sessions, his joy at seeing Arya's enthusiasm quickly turns to concern as he contemplates the growing tensions between the Starks and Lannisters. He realizes that Arya may unknowingly be preparing herself for a future conflict, potentially gearing up for war. Syrio Forel's appearance in the book describes him as being bold, while the show has him with black curly hair. Bran Stark has a disturbing dream at Winterfell, where he is posed to release an arrow from his bow, but his attention is suddenly captured by the appearance of a mysterious raven. Intrigued, Bran follows the raven as it leads him to a hidden tomb entrance. To his astonishment, the raven has 3 eyes, a sight that both fascinates and perplexes him. The raven is perched on a stone direwolf near the entrance to the Stark crypts. Just as Bran is about to uncover the significance of the strange vision, he is abruptly jolted awake from his dream. Despite initially establishing strict guidelines of avoiding dreams, prophecies, and flashbacks, the showrunners David Benioff and D.B. Wise felt they needed to break their rules in this particular instance. Upon awakening, Bran finds his loyal direwolf Summer by his side. This is Old Ned's final appearance in the series because, unfortunately, the talented actress Margaret John passed away in February 2011, just 2 months before the premiere of the first season. Despite Old Ned having a more significant presence in the books, the decision was made by the showrunners not to recast the role as a tribute to the actress. Instead, it was subtly implied in the show that the character had passed away from old age. Theon Greyjoy enters and calls upon Hodor, the simple-minded stableboy who can only utter the word Hodor, to assist in carrying Bran to the throne room. There, Robb Stark is meeting with Tyrion Lannister and Yoren, who are journeying from the Wall to King's Landing. Robb makes it clear that any member of the Night's Watch is welcome, signaling to Tyrion that he is not welcome to stay at Winterfell. Upon Bran's arrival, Tyrion asks about Bran's interest in riding and expresses empathy for his condition as a cripple, much to Bran's annoyance. Tyrion, however, insists that the truth of Bran's situation, like his own as a dwarf, should not be sugarcoated. Tyrion presents Bran with a specifically designed saddle that would allow him to ride despite his disability. Tyrion educates Robb on the importance of matching the horse to the rider, using a yearling to train the horse to respond to Bran's command since he cannot use his heels. Tyrion's gesture is driven by his gratitude towards Bran's half-brother and his soft spot for those socially deemed as outcasts. The title of the episode is derived from the words spoken by Tyrion to Robb: "I have a tender spot in my heart for cripples, bastards, and broken things." Robb welcomes Tyrion to stay, but Tyrion declines, preferring the comfort of the local brothel. As he prepares to depart, Tyrion is unexpectedly attacked by the direwolves without any clear justification, despite his lack of ill intentions towards them. This is probably because in George's original outline, it was Tyrion who seized and sacked Winterfell, not Theon, that ultimately doomed Robb's military campaign. After leaving, Theon approaches Tyrion and suggests that he visit the prostitute Ros at the brothel. Tyrion taunts Theon about his diminished status as a mere lackey in Winterfell, a far cry from his once fearsome lineage. They discuss the sight of the Lannister fleet burning when Tyrion was a boy and witnessing sailors meet their demise in flames. Little do they know, this exchange would eerily predict the events to come in the Battle of Blackwater, where Tyrion orchestrates a plan that leads to a tragic fate for a fleet of sailors, consumed by wildfire. This provocation angers Theon, prompting Tyrion to hand him a coin, insinuating that he may have already partaken in Ros' services. Tyrion's departure is marked by his curiosity about Lady Catelyn's absence, leading him to deduce that she is not in Winterfell. He leaves Theon seething with a mix of resentment and embarrassment over his current position in the Stark household. At the rundown Castle Black, a fresh addition to the Night's Watch has made his entrance, Samwell Tarly, the offspring of the renowned Lord Randall Tarly. Samwell is described as overweight, delicate, and spoilt, failing miserably in his initial combat training, so Alliser Thorne shows no tolerance for Sam's lack of skill, commanding the other trainees to target Sir Piggy. But Jon Snow intervenes, deeming it cruel and unjust. Jon defends Sam against the attackers, despite Thorne's attempts to turn it into a mockery by pitting 3 recruits against Jon and Snam. Samwell Tarly's arrival in the series has a small variation from the book, as some Night's Watch recruits are left out. In the book, Sam is initially targeted by Howder. Jon steps in to protect him, prompting Alliser Thorne to command Howder, Rast, and Albert to confront Jon. Grenn and Pip join Jon's side to support him. However, in the series, Rast is the one who goes after Samwell. Jon ends up facing Rast, Grenn, and Pip on his own in a showdown. Despite the odds, Jon successfully defends Samwell. Samwell appears inexperienced and self-deprecating, labeling himself as a coward and weakling, much to Jon's surprise. Grenn expresses disdain for Sam's perceived weakness, suggesting that they distance themselves from him. In the television series, Castle Black is depicted as having sturdy walls and a protective gate. However, in the original novels, it is described as lacking such fortifications, limiting the Night's Watch ability to protect against threats solely from the north and preventing them from challenging the authority of the Seven Kingdoms. Sam reluctantly accompanies Jon to the wall for sentry duty, despite his admitted poor eyesight, fear of heights, and inability to withstand the cold. Jon questions why Sam chose to join the Night's Watch if he is afraid of nearly everything. Sam reveals that on his 18th birthday, his father presented him with a difficult ultimatum. Despite being his father's heir, Sam was deemed unworthy due to his lack of combat skills and deemed unfit to inherit his family name and title. Facing coercion from his father, Sam felt pressured to join the Night's Watch under threat of a deadly hunting trip, disguised as an accident. Jon is taken aback by the mistreatment of a legitimate son of nobility, realizing that Sam's predicament is worse than his own struggles as a bastard. Sam anticipates the upcoming challenge he must face the following day, bracing himself for the inevitable hardship. Khal Drogo's Khalasar has reached Bast Dothrak, the renowned Dothraki city. Instead of traditional city walls, the entrance is marked by a grand gateway arch adorned with statues of majestic rearing horses. Viserys is visibly frustrated by Drogo's decision to lead his army in what he perceives as the wrong direction. Later he shares a bath with Dora and recounts his upbringing filled with tales of the mighty Targaryen dragons and his prophesied fate. He lists off the names of various dragons and reminisces about the dragon skulls that once adorned the throne room in King's Landing. However, Doria's constant chatter about dragons begins to irritate him, as she bluntly reminds him of their extinction. In response, he instructs her to continue servicing him without uttering another word. Viserys speaks of a total of 9 dragons. Out of these, only 4 are referenced in the novels: Meraxes, Vhagar, Balerion, and the final dragon, whose name remains unknown, while the others were created by the writers, some as inside jokes. Viserys is under the impression that Robert had destroyed their skulls, but in a later episode, it is revealed they are actually kept in the Red Keep's vault. In Season 7, it is specifically stated that Robert had kept them as trophies. Doria claimed to have witnessed a man who possesses the ability to alter his appearance as easily as changing his clothes. This mysterious individual is believed to be affiliated with the Faceless Men, hailing from the city of Braavos. Doria informs Viserys about a pirate she witnessed adorned in gold, whose ship had vibrant coloured silk sails. The pirate in question is believed to be none other than Captain Salladhor Saan, who makes his debut in the Night Land in Season 2. Sansa Stark walks into the Grand Throne Room of the Red Keep, where the menacing Iron Throne looms. She is accompanied by Septa Mordane, and together they engage in a discussion about the pressure on Sansa to bear children for Joffrey. Sansa expresses her fears about the realm turning against her if she fails to produce a male heir, and she also harbours suspicions that Joffrey is still holding a grudge against her for the incident by the river. Furthermore, Sansa grapples with feelings of resentment towards her father for the death of her beloved direwolf, Lady. During a small council meeting, Lord Eddard is informed that the upcoming tournament to celebrate his promotion has caused chaos in the city, with a tavern riot, a brothel fire, 3 stabbings, and a drunken horse race. He discusses with Littlefinger the need to allocate funds to bolster the city guards and agrees to lend 20 of his own men to Janos Slynt's command until the tournament concludes. After the meeting, Eddard converses with Grand Maester Pycelle regarding Jon Arryn's final days. Pycelle mentions that despite his best effort, Jon Arryn's sudden and severe illness proved fatal. Before falling ill, Arryn had borrowed a dull book on lineages of the 7 kingdoms, and his cryptic last words were, "The seed is strong." In the book, Pycelle confides in Ned about Maester Coleman's method of treating Jon Arryn with purgs. Pycelle admits that he believed this treatment would be fatal for Arryn, prompting him to dismiss Coleman. Interestingly, the show does not touch upon the character of Coleman at all, despite his importance in the books for Littlefinger. Carrying the book with him, Eddard encounters Arya in the hallway practicing her balance on one leg. Curious, Arya wants to know about Bran's future in King's Landing now that he has woken up from his long slumber. Eddard explains that Bran needs time to recover his strength before considering such a move. Arya reflects on Bran's dream of joining the Kingsguard, acknowledging that it may no longer be possible due to his paralysis. Eddard agrees, but reassures Arya that Bran can still achieve great things like ruling a holdfast, advising the king, or building castles. When Arya wonders if she could pursue similar paths, Eddard redirects her expectations, predicting that she will marry a noble lord and bear sons who will be lords and princes. Arya asserts, "That's not me." She resumes her one-legged stance as Eddard watches on. Littlefinger meets with Eddard and advises him to keep his inquiry into Jon Arryn's death discreet. He shares intriguing information that Jon Arryn's former squire has been knighted and will participate in the upcoming Hands tourney. Littlefinger also suggests Eddard looks into an armourer in the city. Initially skeptical, Eddard starts to trust Littlefinger more, but Littlefinger quickly dismisses this notion. Eddard sends Jory Castle to speak with Jon Arryn's former squire, Sir Hugh of the Vale, but Sir Hugh, recognizing Jory's lower status, refuses to cooperate. One more scene unfolds at the wall as Jon shares a personal tale with a prostitute named Ross. Jon's hesitation stems from his concern that he would get her pregnant. Jon recounts a recurring dream to Sam in the book. He finds himself in Winterfell, a deserted and eerie place, and descends into the shadowy crypts with no light. In the dream, he cries out that he does not belong there before abruptly waking up. This dream kind of foreshadows that Jon is the son of Rhaegar and Lyanna. Jon and Sam engage in conversation about Jon's last name, Snow, which signifies that he is a child born out of wedlock. In the world of Westeros, illegitimate children of noble families are given specific surnames based on the region where they were born. For example, snow, the north; flowers, the reach; hill, the westerlands; pike, the Iron Islands; rivers, the riverlands; sand, dawn; stone, the vale; storm, the stormlands; or waters, the crownlands. Only bastards born to noble parents who are openly acknowledged by their noble parent are entitled to use these surnames. Those who are not acknowledged by their noble parent, such as Gendry, or whose parents are commoners, do not have the privilege. A noble-born bastard has the opportunity to be legitimized through a royal decree, allowing them to officially adopt their father's surname. However, even after being legitimized, the social stigma associated with being a bastard may persist. Sam confesses his struggles with the opposite sex, while Jon admits his reluctance to father a child who would be condemned to the same life as a bastard like himself. Sir Alliser interrupts with a chilling account of a harsh winter beyond the wall, criticizing Jon for attempting to coddle Sam instead of toughening him up for the impending winter. He recounts a harrowing tale of surviving during a blizzard beyond the wall, culminating in a horrific incident of cannibalism. In the books, there is no indication that any members of the Night's Watch have ever turned to cannibalism. Alliser Thorne's account of his ill-fated expedition beyond the wall is not mentioned in the books, as Thorne is not depicted as a member of the Night's Watch ranging party and has never ventured north of the wall in the source material. Eddard's investigation leads him to a blacksmith in the city, where he meets Master Smith, Tobo Moat, and his apprentice Gendry, who had caught Jon Arryn's attention. Mo presents a bull's head helm crafted by Gendry, which impresses Eddard. However, Gendry mentions that it's not for sale, prompting Mott to scold him. Gendry explains he made it for himself, and Eddard reassures Mott that he is not offended. In the book, Mott and Gendry inform Eddard that Stannis was with Jon Arryn during his investigations. However, in the show, there is no mention of Stannis being involved in Arryn's inquiries. In the books, Littlefinger informs Ned not only about Hugh of the Vale, but also about 3 other individuals who were part of Jon Arryn's staff: a kitchen maid, a stable hand who later enlisted in the City Watch, and a potboy. Jory interacts with each of them, but it is only the potboy who offers valuable insights that Jon Arryn was planning to foster his son with Stannis, which is ultimately why Lysa killed her husband. Tobio Mott reveals to Eddard Stark in the book that an unknown nobleman covered the cost of Gendry's apprenticeship fee. Gendry informs Eddard that Jon would occasionally visit and inquire about various things, such as Gendry's feelings about working at Mott's smithy, his treatment there, and even the identity of his mother. Joe Dempsey, who plays Gendry, initially tried out for the role of Jon Snow, but ended up landing the part of Gendry instead. The character of Gendry was portrayed as older than in the books, where he was only 16 years old. In the show, Gendry is depicted as being in his 20s. Observing Gendry closely, Eddard realizes that he is one of King Robert's illegitimate children. Yet he struggles to comprehend why Jon Arryn would take an interest in this particular matter. After some contemplation, Eddard acknowledges that Robb has numerous illegitimate offspring and doesn't seem to care much about any of them. Before departing, Eddard instructs Mott to inform him if Gendry ever expresses a desire to train with a sword rather than craft them. Afterwards, Eddard instructs Jory to deliver a message to King Robert. However, upon reaching the king's quarters, Jory overhears the sound of multiple women coming from inside. Sir Jaime Lannister, who was stationed there, is upset that the king has him guarding the door while he entertains other women, disrespecting Jaime's sister in the process. The two men discuss their involvement in the Greyjoy Rebellion, where they fought for King Robert against Balon Greyjoy's attempt to succeed the Iron Islands from the realm. Jory attempts to leave the message with Jaime, but he refuses, expressing his unwillingness to serve Lord Stark. The book fails to mention the involvement of Jaime and Jory in the Siege of Pike amidst the Greyjoy Rebellion. However, it is strongly suggested that they were present, based on the fact that the assault was commanded by Robert and Ned. Given Jaime's role as a member of Robert's Kingsguard and Jory's position as Ned's captain of the guard, it is reasonable to assume they were both actively participating in the battle at Pike. At the Wall, Jon Snow instructs the new recruits to go easy on Samwell Tarly, but Rast defies him, stating that if Sir Alliser Thorne commands him to fight Lady Piggy, he would rather turn himself into bacon. Unfazed by Rass's defiance, Jon uses his direwolf ghost to intimidate him into compliance that night. The following day, none of the recruits are willing to face off against Sam. When Gren surrenders after a feeble blow from Sam, Sir Alliser reprimands Jon for his insubordinate behavior. As the sun sets that day, Viserys is filled with fury when Daenerys sends Doria to invite him to dine with her. He sees it as his sister ordering him to come rather than a simple invitation. Storming into Daenerys' tent, Viserys insults the dinner and gifts of clothing she gives as a peace offering for confiscating his horse earlier. Refusing to dress like a Dothraki, whom he sees as barbarians, Viserys still wears his tattered clothes from Pentos. Mocking Daenerys, Viserys sneers that she would soon try to braid his hair like a Dothraki. Enraged by his lack of gratitude, Daenerys fires back, declaring he has no right to braid his hair until he achieves victories in battle. This only further infuriates Viserys, who then tackles her to the ground and attempts to strike her. He insults her, calling her a horse-lord slut, and warning her that she has awoken the dragon. However, this time Daenerys fights back. She strikes Viserys in the face with a metal and leather belt, shocking him into silence. She asserts her authority as the wife of the cowl and bearer of his child, making it clear that Viserys means nothing to the Dothraki. She warns him that if he raised a hand against her again, he would lose his hand. Later, Daenerys confides in Mormont her realization that Viserys is unfit to be king of Westeros. She sees him as weak and ineffective, incapable of leading an army even if Drogo granted him one. Mormont agrees with her assessment. Initially, Viserys had a close bond with his sister, but as time passed, he started to harbor resentment towards Daenerys due to their mother's death during her birth. This led him to mistreat her, using harsh words and even resorting to physical violence. As the tournament kicks off, Sansa observes from the stands with keen interest. Arya goes to the tournament in the television series, while in the book, Sansa is accompanied by Jean Poole at the event. Sir Gregor Clegane, the formidable older sibling of Sandor Clegane, known as the Hound, enters the arena. His initial joust is against Sir Hugh, but what starts as a friendly competition quickly turns deadly as Gregor accidentally impales Sir Hugh with a lance shard, resulting in his untimely demise. Beside Sansa sits Littlefinger, who casually remarks on the strained relationship between Sansa and Joffrey, noting their recent lovers' quarrel. Despite Joffrey's cold demeanor toward her, Littlefinger shares a chilling revelation about Gregor, also known as the Mountain That Rides. He recounts a disturbing incident from their childhood where Gregor callously burnt Sandor's face after catching him playing with one of his toys. Littlefinger cautions Sansa against spreading this dark tale, hinting at the dangerous consequences of crossing paths with the notorious Gregor Clegane. Littlefinger narrates the tale of the Clegane brothers to Sansa in the television series. However, in the book, the Hound personally shares the story with Sansa while walking her back to the Red Keep after consuming large quantities of alcohol. He cautions her that revealing the story to anyone will result in him killing her. Initially, the script for this scene had the Hound narrating the tale, and this was part of Rory McCain's audition tape, which can be found as a bonus feature on DVD for Season 1. However, due to the adverse weather conditions, the filming of the scene had to be postponed, and during reshoots, the script was altered to have Littlefinger recount the story instead, possibly due to McCain's unavailability. In the books, the left side of the Hound's face is marred by severe burns, resulting in a gruesome sight. His jawbone is exposed due to the complete loss of skin, and his left ear is missing, leaving behind a gaping hole. However, for the TV series adaptation, the extent of the damage was toned down to make the prosthetic makeup application on actor Rory McCain more feasible. The Hands tournament in the series is significantly condensed. The final 4 contenders are the Mountain, Loras Tyrell, Jaime Lannister, and the Hound. Surprisingly, there is no reference to the archery competition or the melee. The book elaborates on the jousting event, spanning over a duration of 2 days. Cersei pays a visit to Eddard in his chambers, noting that the Hand is absent from his own tournament. Despite Cersei's attempt to initiate a conversation to move past the incident on the King's Road, Eddard perceives that she has a hidden agenda for her visit. Cersei then questions Eddard about his true intentions for being in King's Landing. aware of the Starks' aversion to the capital. Eddard responds that he is there to faithfully serve the king, to which Cersei suggests that while his brother Brandon was meant to lead, Eddard was destined to follow. At the Crossroads Inn, Catelyn and Sir Roderick Castle are quietly dining as they make their way to Winterfell in secrecy. The troubadour Marillion attempted to charm them with his songs, but their meal is interrupted by the unexpected arrival of Tyrion Lannister and Yoren. Despite being told there are no rooms available, Tyrion offers a gold coin in exchange for a place to stay, and sellsword Bronn generally offers his own room. Jerome Flynn makes his debut as the character Bronn. While the origins of Bronn are left ambiguous in both the books and the series, in the books it is theorized he might be a creature of Varys. Marillion, eager to impress Tyrion, directs his attention to Catelyn's table by offering to serenade him with songs of his father's military conquests. Tyrion expresses his disdain for hearing a song celebrating his father Tywin's supposed victory over the Mad King at King's Landing. This particular event refers to the brutal sack of King's Landing, which marked the culmination of Robert's rebellion against the Mad King. The reason behind Tyrion's disgust is rooted in the fact that this was not a glorious triumph, but rather a dishonorable display of betrayal and mercilessness. Tywin, who had previously served as Hand of the Mad King, deceitfully entered the city under the pretense of aiding the Mad King in his final moments. However, he had actually switched allegiances and commanded his army to unleash a brutal onslaught of violence upon the defenseless inhabitants of the city. Additionally, Tywin orchestrated the massacre of the royal family and their supporters as a show of loyalty to Robert. Despite the widespread animosity towards the Targaryens and Tywin's significant political and financial influence, he managed to evade accountability for these heinous acts. Furthermore, Jaime's violation of his oath by slaying the Mad King. Despite being despised by many in Westeros, the Lannisters are begrudgingly tolerated due to their wealth and power. Tyrion then recognizes Catelyn, inadvertently revealing her identity. Catelyn then boldly accuses Tyrion of attempting to kill her son, Bran, on 2 occasions, and pleads for assistance in bringing him to justice before the king. The inn is situated in the Riverlands, under the control of Catelyn's father, which means the knights present are loyal to him. Tyrion suddenly finds himself surrounded by armed men and in Catelyn's custody. In the book, not a single member of the Frey family residing in the inn complies with Catelyn's appeals. Masha Heddle, a woman who is the innkeeper at the Inn of the Crossroads, is eventually executed by Tywin Lannister for letting Catelyn Stark capture his son Tyrion, even though Masha had no power to stop it. Her nephew takes over the inn after her death. It is uncertain if Masha met the same fate in the television series. Lord Eddard Stark makes his way to the tournament grounds to have a conversation with Lord Commander Barristan Selmy regarding the unfortunate passing of Sir Hugh of the Vale. Barristan mentions that Sir Hugh did not have any family or close friends, so he took it upon himself to stand vigil for the fallen knight. Ned expresses his skepticism about the circumstances surrounding Sir Hugh's death, particularly questioning how he was able to acquire a new suit of armor so quickly after being knighted. Barristan reflects on the irony of their past history as adversaries, despite never having engaged in combat against each other. They found themselves on opposing sides during the Battle of the Trident, where Robert Baratheon's forces emerged victorious over the army of the Mad King. Various sources, including the books and the HBO Viewer's Guide to Season 2, reveal that Sir Barristan, although disapproving of the Mad King's brutal behaviour, remained devoted to his duty as a member of the Kingsguard to protect the royal family. Consequently, he fought alongside Rhaegar Targaryen. Selmy himself sustained serious injuries during the conflict. There were calls for Barristan's execution following the defeat, but Robert was impressed by his skill and unwavering sense of loyalty that in a gesture of respect, Robert sent his own maester to tend to Selmy's wounds and later granted him a pardon. He even appointed Barristan as the commander of his personal Kingsguard. In the episode, Barristan informs Ned that King Robert intends to participate in a joust later in the day. Ned later witnesses King Robert teasing his squire, Lancel Lannister. Robert sends Lancel on a wild goose chase, instructing him to fetch a non-existent item called the breastplate stretcher. Chuckling, Robert turned to Ned and questioned how long it would take for Lancel to catch on to the prank. Despite Robert's insistence on joining the joust, Ned bluntly points out that he is too overweight for his armor and that the other knights would purposely let him win. This revelation frustrates Robert, but he reluctantly concedes to the truth and agrees that they can at least enjoy watching the joust from the stands. In the novel, Robert's decision to join the tournament is not just impulsive. Cersei cleverly manipulates him through reverse psychology by expressively forbidding him from participating in front of his brother, his knights, and half the court. In the book, Varys discloses to Ned that the Lannisters planned to assassinate Robert during the melee. An unknown assailant would have made it appear as an unfortunate accident. The day's first joust features the intimidating Sir Gregor Clegane, known as the Mountain, facing off against the beloved Sir Loras Tyrell, also known as the Knight of the Flowers. Sir Loras presents a stunning flower to Sansa Stark, catching the attention of spectators like Littlefinger and Lord Renly, who place a bet on the outcome, with Renly favouring Loras. As the match begins, Loras rides a mare in heat, causing a commotion that unsettles the Mountain Stallion, leading to the Mountain being thrown off. Enraged by his loss, Gregor restlessly beheads his own horse before turning his fury towards Sir Loras. Sandor Clegane intervenes to protect Loras from his brother's wrath, engaging in a fierce battle until King Robert commands them to stop. Sandor shows respect to the king by bowing, while Gregor storms away in anger. Sir Loras names Sandor as the winner, much to the Hound's unease. In the TV adaptation, the Hound is not depicted as taking part in the tournament. Instead, he remains close to Robert and Joffrey throughout. His involvement only occurs when his brother threatens to harm Loras Tyrell. The novel describes Gregor, the Mountain, Clegane's shield, as bearing the 3 black dogs of his house's sigil. In the TV episode, the Clegane banners only show 1 dog painted on the shield. Both the book and the episode House Clegane, Blu-ray edition, reveal Gregor and Sandor's grandfather once saved Lytos Lannister, the grandfather of Jaime and Cersei, from a lioness while hunting. The old Clegane released his dog, which successfully scared away the lioness. In appreciation, Titus established House Clegane and a tradition for its boys to be trained as knights by the Lannisters. The 3 black dogs in their sigil symbolizes the 3 dogs that sacrificed their lives to save Titus. Tyrion Lannister had his blindfold removed and discovered that their group, accompanied by several knights and the sellsword Bronn from the Inn at the Crossroads, was traveling on the eastern road towards the Vale of Arryn. Tyrion discovers that he is under suspicion for being behind the plot to kill Bran, as the assassin supposedly had his Valyrian dagger. He argues that it would be foolish for him to give such a distinctive weapon to an assassin. In the first book, he also refutes Littlefinger's claim that he lost the dagger to him in a bet, stating that he would never bet against his own family. In the second book, Jaime confirms that it was actually Robert who won the dagger in the bet, not Tyrion, further discrediting Littlefinger's accusation. In episode 5, Catelyn had been loudly insisting that they were heading to Winterfell. Tyrion commends her cleverness, mentioning that his father would generously reward his safe return, which catches Bronn's attention. Tyrion warns that Lady Lysa Arryn has become unstable after her husband's death and would likely attempt to harm him in the Eyrie. He protests his innocence in the attack on Bran's life, reasoning that he wouldn't be foolish enough to give the assassin his own weapon. Before Catelyn could respond, the group is ambushed by one of the hill tribes, resulting in the death of most of their companions. Sellsword Chiggin sustains serious injuries during one of the attacks, prompting Brom to swiftly end his suffering by cutting his throat to prevent attracting further danger. Despite suffering losses, they manage to fend off the attackers. Instead of fleeing, Tyrion fights bravely, saving Catelyn's life by killing his first opponent in the skirmish. In the midst of the Hill Tribe attack, Tyrion opts to defend himself solely with a shield instead of the axe he wields in the book. The only survivors of these brutal ambushes are Catelyn, Tyrion, Sir Roderick, Bronn, Marillion, and Willis Woad. Alongside the threat of the hill tribes, Catelyn's group faces the challenge of starvation on their arduous journey, resulting in the necessity of slaughtering horses for subsistence. Catelyn's journey from the base of the mountain to the Eyrie is not depicted in the television series. She ascends the steep path on the back of a mule with no sign of Maya Stone, the illegitimate daughter of King Robert, who typically guides visitors to the Eyrie in the book. In the novel, Catelyn arrives at the Eyrie alone and reunites with her sister in her chambers before Tyrion is hoisted up in a basket the following day. However, in the show, Catelyn and Tyrion arrive together and confront Lysa in the Grand Hall in front of all the influential inhabitants. An additional scene in the series shows Tyrion's imprisonment and briefly introduces Maud. Additionally, Robert Arryn is known as Robin Arryn in the show, likely to prevent any confusion with King Robert Baratheon. In Winterfell, Bran is feeling upset due to his mother's absence. Maester Luwin attempts to reassure him, but Bran remains troubled. When Bran becomes frustrated about not being able to practice archery, Luwin proposes that he could start learning to use a short bow similar to the one used by the Dothraki in mounted combat. House Lannister's official words, "Hear me roar," were forgotten by Bran, but their unofficial motto, "A Lannister always pays his debts," was also referenced by Tyrion in the same scene. The phrase "hear me roar" is seldom mentioned in both the books and the show. Maester Luwin and Theon discuss the Greyjoys' rebellion that occurred 9 years prior to the start of the series. Balon Greyjoy, Theon's father, was defeated in the rebellion and was compelled to yield to Robert. The Starks took Theon as a ward as punishment for the rebellion, leading to various characters reminding him that he is not a true Stark. Robert subtly refers to the rebellion by mentioning, "We haven't faced a true battle in 9 years." This suggestion excites Bran. In another part of the castle, Theon Greyjoy is enjoying the company of his favorite prostitute, Ross. However, his mood changes when she unfavorably compares his skills to those of Tyrion Lannister. At the Red Keep, Lord Varys has a secret meeting with Ned. Varys reveals to Ned that the king is in grave danger and will likely meet his demise unless Ned intervenes. Confused, Ned questions why Varys is disclosing this information to him now. Varys explains that he needed to ensure Ned's loyalty and trustworthiness before sharing such sensitive details. He commends Ned for his honorable and genuine nature, highlighting him as a rare beacon of integrity in the corrupt city. Additionally, Varys discloses that Jon Arryn was murdered using a deadly weapon known as the Tears of Lys, as he had become a threat by asking too many probing questions. Afterwards, Arya is playfully pursuing cats as part of her sword practice. She follows one into the dark dungeons beneath the castle, whereas in the book, Myrcella and Tommen spot Arya and don't recognize her because she is so dirty and think she doesn't belong in the castle. Their scepter orders the guards to capture Arya, who doesn't want them to realize it is her, and so she manages to escape their grasp. However, she inadvertently stumbles upon a hidden area under the Red Keep where the colossal dragon skulls of the Targaryens are stored away. In the TV adaptation, Arya only comes across one dragon skull in the dungeons beneath the Red Keep, likely that of Balerion considering its immense size instead of the multiple skulls described in the book. These dragon skulls are depicted as white in the show, whereas in the original source material, they are described as black due to their high iron content. While trying to get out, she overhears a conversation between two men, Varys and Magister Illyroy Mopatis of Pentos. Varys reveals that plans are in motion and tensions between the Lion and the Wolf houses are escalating rapidly. War is imminent in the Seven Kingdoms, but it has arrived sooner than expected. Khal Drogo will not make his move to invade Westeros until his son is born and deemed healthy, a process that will take several more months. Illyroy proposes the idea of eliminating Ned to prevent the impending conflict, but Varys rejects the notion. The two individuals confined to the dungeons are clearly depicted in the series as Varys and Illyroy. However, in the books, their identities are not explicitly revealed. Illyroy can be distinguished based on his physical attributes, whereas Varys presents a challenge due to his disguise through makeup, scarred face, and stubble of dark beard. The easiest way to identify him is by his sentence, "I must have gold and 50 birds." Arya manages to escape from the dungeons and rushes to inform her father about what she overheard, but she ends up mixing her words in the process. Before Arya can clarify herself to her father, they are interrupted by Yoren, who has hurriedly ridden from the inn at the crossroads to warn Ned about Catelyn's arrest of Tyrion Lannister. Ned decides to keep this information to himself while Arya inquires with Jory Castle about the safety of his father's household guard. Jory reassures her that there is no need to worry about her father's well-being. Later on, Varys discovers Littlefinger in the Grand Hall, gazing at the majestic Iron Throne. Varys discloses his knowledge of Littlefinger's role in aiding Ned's investigation into Jon Arryn's mysterious death, cautioning him about the potential repercussions if the Lannisters were to uncover his involvement. In response, Littlefinger astutely points out that he is aware of Varys' meeting with both Ned and Illyroy earlier that day, hinting at Varys' loyalty beyond the Narrow Sea. Their discussion is abruptly interrupted by Renly, who announces that Robert will be joining them for their upcoming small council gathering. Ned has been summoned to a small council meeting where he is surprised to learn that the king is unaware of the recent developments involving Catelyn and Tyrion. King Robert reveals to Eddard that Daenerys Targaryen is pregnant, and her child would pose a threat to the Iron Throne. In the books, Barristan Selmy participated in this small council meeting, a detail omitted from the show. Robert expresses his desire to eliminate Daenerys, her unborn child, and Viserys as quickly as possible. Varys reveals that Jorah Mormont is spying on the Dothraki for them. Concerns arise among the council members regarding the possibility of her brother Viserys rallying the Dothraki to invade Westeros and reclaim the Iron Throne. Eddard Stark expresses his strong opposition to the idea of assassinating a defenseless girl, emphasizing the moral implications of murdering a child. However, his objections are met with skepticism from the rest of the council, who argue that the preservation of the realm's stability and the safety of the reigning monarch, King Robert, must take precedence. Renly states they should have done this years ago. Varys presents a nuanced perspective, suggesting that the assassination of Daenerys might avert a potentially catastrophic conflict in the future. He asserts that while the decision may be reprehensible, it is a pragmatic necessity to safeguard the realm. Grand Maester Pycelle, meanwhile, offers a cautious endorsement of Varys' proposal, mentioning all the thousands of people that will die should Daenerys be allowed to invade, and shouldn't it be better and wiser to kill her now and spare all those unnecessary deaths. Peter Baelish, ever the opportunist, sees the situation as a blunt calculus that they need to kill her and be done with it. Ultimately, despite Eddard Stark's moral objections, the majority of the small council reaches a consensus in favor of dispatching an assassin to eliminate Daenerys Targaryen. When Ned sees that he will have no support, he resigns his handship in protest and departs the chamber with Robert's furious rants echoing behind him. In the show, Varys is depicted as supporting the plan to assassinate Daenerys, despite appearing to be on her side secretly in Season 6, which makes no sense. However, in the books, a revelation comes in the final chapter of the 5th book, A Dance with Dragons, where Varys discloses his hidden allegiance to the Targaryen family. However, it is not Daenerys that Varys is backing, but a young man who claims to be Aegon Targaryen. Believed to have perished during the sack of King's Landing, the storyline involving Aegon was omitted from the TV series, unfortunately. In the Grand Hall of the Eyrie, Lady Lisa Arryn is presiding over court on behalf of her young son, Robin. Lisa's appearance differs between the series and the books. In the show, she is portrayed as very thin, while in the novels, she is described as overweight with a pale and swollen face. Lysa is outraged that Catelyn has endangered them all by bringing Tyrion to the Vale. Kate Dickie, who played the character Lisa Arryn, used a prosthetic breast piece over her clothing to create the illusion of breastfeeding her on-screen son. Tyrion warns that harming him would lead to war with House Lannister, but Lysa is unfazed by his threats, confident in the Vale's defenses and the impregnability of the Eyrie. In the books, the Eyrie is depicted as a fortress consisting of 7 towers, constructed on the side of a massive mountain known as the Giant's Lance. Access to the Eyrie is restricted to a single pathway, protected by 3 smaller towers. However, in the show, the Eyrie occupies the entire summit of a petite mountain. The moon door is not simply a trapdoor in the ground leading to the abyss beneath the castle, but rather a colossal doorway situated right next to a steep cliff. Lysa orders Tyrion to be placed in the sky cells, precarious cells with one side open only to a sheer drop down the mountainside. This leaves Tyrion cowering in a corner, fearful of falling to his death in his sleep. Sir Loras and Lord Renly, who share a romantic relationship, convene in a private chamber where Renly expresses his frustration about Robert's plan for a hunting trip in the Kingswood. Renly is not looking forward to spending weeks in the cold and rain hunting animals. Loras suggests that Renly should seize the crown for himself with the support of his influential family. However, Renly rejects the idea since he is 4th in line for the Iron Throne. Loras urges that Joffrey is cruel, Tommen is too young, and Stannis lacks the charm to be a successful king. He emphasizes that the people adore him for his kindness and aversion to violence, unlike his brothers. Loras casually mentions that Tommen is 8 years old, but this information is likely incorrect due to the discrepancy between the books and the show. In the books, Tommen is around 8 years old, but in the television series, his age, along with the other children, was adjusted by 2 to 3 years. By season 5, specifically, it is mentioned that Tommen no longer requires a regent, indicating that he is likely at least 16 years old, the legal age of adulthood in Westeros. It is widely believed that a year passes during the early seasons of the show, which would mean that Tommen is approximately 12 years old in season 1. In the novels, the romantic connection between Renly and Loras is subtly suggested, whereas in the TV series, their love is betrayed more openly and explicitly. Queen Cersei and King Robert savor an uncommon moment together, sharing a drink as they delve into a conversation about the looming Targaryen danger. To everyone's surprise, Cersei finds herself in agreement with Eddard, highlighting the logistical hurdle of the Dothraki crossing the narrow sea without any ships at their disposal. Their conversation then turns to Lyanna Stark, catching Robert off guard as Cersei had never before inquired about her over their 17 years together. Robert confesses that Lyanna's tragic death left a void within him that not even the entire realm could fill. He admits that his marriage with Cersei was doomed from the start due to his lingering hold that Lyanna's memories had on him, lamenting that he can barely recall what she looked like. Cersei, in turn, reveals that she once harbored feelings for Robert, even after the loss of their first child, for a considerable period of time. She questions Robert about the possibility of their marriage ever succeeding, to which he bluntly responds with a definitive no. Robert and Cersei's discussion regarding their unfulfilling marriage being a key factor in manipulating the stability of the kingdom was not part of the original script. Surprisingly, it was a last-minute addition during the reshoots in post-production as the episode was running shorter than expected. The writers themselves admitted that it became one of their most cherished scenes that they had written. Robert concurs, acknowledging the potential danger if the Dothraki were to land and the Knights of Westeros sought refuge within their fortified walls. In such a scenario, the nomadic warriors could easily wreak havoc and devastation across the land until the common people eventually submit to Viserys as their ruler. Cersei proposes the combined forces of the Seven Kingdoms could prevail against the Dothraki threat, but Robert argues that she underestimates the effectiveness of a single united army under a single leader with a singular objective, as opposed to the disjointed and diverse armies of Westeros. Ned instructs his staff to start preparing for a journey. While Ned is getting his belongings together, Littlefingers show up and proposes to accompany him to the location where Jon Arryn was last seen before falling ill. Ned accepts the offer. Littlefinger escorts Ned Stark to the location where Jon Arryn had visited before falling ill, a brothel owned by Littlefinger. The brothel where Barra and her mother reside is revealed to be owned by Chatea, not Littlefinger. There, Ned encounters yet another of Robert's illegitimate children, a baby girl and her mother, a blonde prostitute named Megan. Megan proudly points out that her child shares Robert's distinctive nose and dark hair. Curious, Eddard questions Littlefinger about Jon Arryn's quest to uncover Robert's hidden offspring. But Littlefinger claims ignorance, suggesting that perhaps Robert had suddenly taken an interest in acknowledging his illegitimate children. Ned remains doubtful of this explanation. After departing from the brothel, Ned, Jory Castle and their 2 escorts are successfully met by a sizable assembly of Lannister guards under the command of Sir Jaime Lannister. Jaime has been informed of Tyrion's detention and is eager for an explanation. Ned responds by admitting that he is responsible for Tyrion's arrest. Jaime issues a threat to Ned, but Ned quickly points out that killing him would also result in the death of Tyrion. Jaime reluctantly agrees and decides to target Ned's men instead. 2 of Ned's guards, Heward and Will, are swiftly taken down by Lannister soldiers at the start of the skirmish. In retaliation, Ned and Jory manage to eliminate 6 of the enemy soldiers. Jory confronts Jaime in combat, but tragically falls victim to Jaime's deadly dagger thrust through his eyes. Enraged by the loss of his comrade, Ned engages Jaime in a fierce sword fight. Jaime is initially surprised by Ned's skill and resilience in battle, but eventually finds himself exhilarated by the challenge of facing such a formidable opponent. Jaime starts to feel uneasy as he realizes Ned's impressive skills in combat. Just as they are about to engage in battle once more, a Lannister guard intervenes and injures Ned by stabbing him in the leg with a spear. Jaime is frustrated by the dishonorable act and swiftly subdues the guard. Before leaving, Jaime informs Ned that he demands the return of his brother. The confrontation between Jaime and Eddard unfolds quite differently in the series compared to the book. In the book, Eddard and his guards are on horseback, far from the brothel when they are suddenly surrounded by the Lannisters. Jaime's intentions is to intimidate Ned, so he commands his men to attack the Stark guards. Ned does not engage in duel with Jaime, and he avoids being harmed by a Lannister soldier. However, his horse is wounded and collapses on top of him, causing a serious leg injury. The identity of Jory Castle's murderer remains unknown. Jaime is not directly involved in the altercation. The event occurs during the night amidst a heavy downpour of rain. Lord Eddard Stark awakens from a deep slumber, recovering from the injuries inflicted upon him by Jaime Lannister's men. To his surprise, he is greeted by King Robert Baratheon and Queen Cersei. Cersei is livid over Ned's actions in apprehending her brother Tyrion and engaging in a confrontation with Jaime. She demands that Robert take action against Ned immediately, but Robert insists on hearing Ned's side of the story before passing judgment. In a moment of frustration, Robert strikes Cersei when she insults him, leaving her with a bruise that she defiantly vows to wear as a badge of honor. He warns her to hold her tongue or face further consequences, leading to Cersei storming off in anger. In the book, when Robert and Cersei visit Ned, he confesses to Robert that he had visited a brothel to see his illegitimate child, Barra. Robert feels ashamed, whereas Cersei remains stone-faced. Following the altercation, Robert reinstates Ned as his Hand of the King and urges him to mend the rift between House Stark and House Lannister to prevent a potential war. He cautions Ned against resigning from his position again, threatening to appoint Jaime Lannister in his place if he does. Robert emphasizes the importance of maintaining peace in the realm as he prepares to depart on a hunting trip, expecting reconciliation between the 2 powerful houses in his absence. King Robert, accompanied by his brother Renly, Sir Barristan Selmy, and Lancel Lannister, goes out hunting. Lancel supplies Robert with wine, causing him to become drunk and reminisce about the good old days when young knights sought fame and enemies were more straightforward. Robert boasts about his conquest with women, but Renly grows angry when questioned about his own romantic history. In the city of Vaes Dothrak, Daenerys Targaryen is examining her dragon eggs. Even though Illaroy insists that they are just mere stones, she contemplates whether they could be hatched through intense heat, and decides to place one of the eggs on a brazier. Unfortunately, nothing occurs, much to her dismay. As she attempts to remove the egg from the brazier, Irri enters the room and fears that she will burn herself. Irri takes the egg from Daenerys, but surprisingly, Daenerys remains unscathed while Irri ends up with burns on her hands. This is an added scene that doesn't take place in the book. It is to emphasize Daenerys' resistance to heat. In Winterfell, Bran experiences yet another vivid dream involving the mysterious three-eyed raven. In this dream, the raven soars into the depths of the castle crypts, leaving Bran feeling unsettled upon waking. As he rouses from his slumber, he is pleasantly surprised to see Hodor presenting him with the completed saddle that was crafted by Tyrion Lannister. This is yet another vision of the mystical three-eyed crow, mirroring the one seen in the 4th episode. Eager to test out the new saddle, Bran joins his brother Robb and their friend Theon for a ride. During their outing, they receive troubling news from King's Landing regarding Ned's injury, Jory's death, and Tyrion's capture. Theon suggests that Robb should start preparing the North for war, but Robb remains steadfast in his decision to wait until the right moment, following his parents' instructions to stay in Winterfell for now. Their peaceful ride is interrupted when they realize that Bran has wandered off on his horse. Frantically searching for him, Robb comes across a group of wildlings threatening Bran and attempting to steal his horse. In a swift and deadly confrontation, Robb takes down 2 of the attackers, but one wildling holds Bran at knife point, putting his life in immediate danger. To Robb's dismay, Theon takes matter into his own hands and shoots the wildling from behind, saving Bran, but angering Robb in the process. The lone surviving wildling, a woman named Osha, surrenders and pleads for mercy. After much deliberation, Robb decides to spare Osha's life and take her captive instead. As Bran is ambushed during his journey, he is confronted by 4 attackers in the TV series: Stiv, Wallen, Osha, and an unidentified man. However, in the books, there are 6 assailants: the aforementioned 4 and an additional unnamed man and a plump woman named Hallie. Interestingly, the direwolves, Summer and Greywind, do not participate in the alteration on screen. In the book, the wolves come to the rescue with Robb, ultimately taking down multiple wildlings in the process. Following this incident, Daenerys is summoned by the powerful crones of the city, known as the Dosh Khaleen, who are the widows of cows who died in battle. She is instructed to consume the raw heart of a stallion while the crones interpret the omens. Initially, it appears that Daenerys may not be able to keep the organ down, but to her and Drogo's relief, she manages to compose herself. Daenerys, played by Emilia Clarke, had to consume a stallion heart made of gelatine and solidified marmalade, which was deemed safe for consumption. Despite this, Clarke mentioned that it had a repulsive flavor resembling chlorine and uncooked pasta, causing her genuine reactions of disgust. During the filming of the scene, Clarke ended up covered in so much fake blood that it left her sticky all over. In fact, at one point between takes, she even got stuck to a toilet seat due to the excessive amount of fake blood on her body. The crones proclaim that Daenerys and Drogo's unborn son will be known as the stallion that mounts the world, a legendary conqueror whose arrival has long been foretold in Dothraki legends. Daenerys decides to name her son Rhaego in honor of her late brother Rhaegar, who was also killed by Robert Baratheon. Despite Jorah Mormont's explanation of the ritual, Viserys remains unimpressed and somewhat repulsed by the ceremony. It is only when the Dothraki begin chanting Rhaego's name and Drogo lifts Daenerys and carries her around the room that Viserys realizes the extent of their affection for her. Consuming the heart of the stallion appears to be the focal point of the Vaes Dothrak ritual depicted in the series. However, in the book, the ceremony is further elaborated with the procession around the revered city. Viserys angrily exits the tent. Later, he is caught in Daenerys' tent by Ser Jorah Mormont attempting to steal Dany's dragon eggs. Viserys confides in Ser Jorah that a ruler must be either feared or loved, and he has never been loved like the Dothraki loved Daenerys. He acknowledges that Jorah desires Daenerys, but he remains indifferent. Viserys reveals his intention to acquire the eggs in order to hire an army, but he is thwarted by Ser Jorah and forced to abandon the eggs. Mormont observes as Viserys departs. Dragon eggs are extremely valuable, even if the dragons won't hatch. Viserys would be able to buy a ship and an army with them. This scene is not shown in the book. In the Eyrie, Tyrion nearly tumbles out of his sky cell while in slumber, much to his dismay. Despite his efforts to negotiate with the jailer, Maud, he is unsuccessful. Eventually, Tyrion manages to persuade Maud to deliver a message to Lady Lysa Arryn in exchange for the gold he had on him at the time of his capture. In the TV series, there is a scene where Tyrion tries unsuccessfully to get Maud's attention by offering him gold. However, in the book, Tyrion is able to persuade Maud on his first try, leading to men coming to Tyrion's cell to verify his willingness to confess. This enables Tyrion to convince them to have Maud return his Shadowcat skin coat. When summoned by Lysa, she assumes that the Sky Cells has broken Tyrion's resolve, but all he admits to is being a deceiver, a frequenter of brothels, and a prankster. He continues to proclaim his innocence regarding the alleged crimes of plotting murder, particularly against Bran Stark. Nevertheless, Tyrion seizes the moment during his audience in front of Lysa's court to assert his right to justice and a fair trial. In the series, Tyrion goes into greater detail about his crimes during his confession. In the book, he is quickly interrupted, but in the series, he humorously provides multiple examples. Lysa reluctantly agrees to his demands. Recognizing that Lysa's young son is unfit to serve as a judge in a formal trial, Tyrion opts for a trial by combat, a right which Lysa begrudgingly accepts. Unable to participate in the combat herself, Lysa is looking for a champion to fight on her behalf. Ser Varadis Eggen volunteers, but refuses to face Tyrion as it would be dishonorable to fight such an unequal opponent. In response, Tyrion nominates his brother, Jaime, a renowned swordsman. Lysa objects, insisting that a champion be chosen from those present. Facing a dilemma, Tyrion pleads for volunteers. After a tense pause, Bronn, a sellsword, steps forward to offer his services as Tyrion's champion, turning the tide in his favor. In the book, Lysa presents Varadis with Jon Arryn's ceremonial sword for the duel, replacing his own. Catelyn observes that Varadis appears uneasy handling the unfamiliar weapon. In the book, the trial by combat occurs in the beautiful Eyrie garden the day following Tyrion's admission of guilt. Despite Catelyn's attempts to persuade Lysa against going through with it, expressing concern that Bronn could emerge victorious and emphasizing Tyrion's value alive, her efforts prove fruitless. King Robert, accompanied by his brother Renly, Sir Barristan Selmy, and Lancel Lannister, goes out hunting. Lancel supplies Robert with wine, causing him to become drunk and reminisce about the good old days when young knights sought fame and enemies were more straightforward. Robert boasts about his conquest with women, but Renly grows angry when questioned about his own romantic history. Renly criticizes Robert for ignoring the violence of the past and storms off, leaving Sir Barristan concerned. Lancel continues to provide wine to the king. Robert reminisces about the past and talks about the glory days of making the Eight. In the book, the hunting expedition is not shown, and Varys informs Ned about the excessive wine that Cersei encouraged Lancel to give to Robert. The phrase, making the Eight, is not mentioned in the book. Beside Renly, Lancel, and Sir Barristan Selmy, Robert is joined on the hunt by Joffrey, the Hound, Sir Balon Swan, Lord Euron Royce, and numerous other courtiers. Later, Sir Robar Royce arrives with a message from Ned to Robert. Joffrey, the Hound, the Royces, Sir Balon, and 20 other from the group head back to King's Landing before their tragic boar incident occurs. Arya reluctantly attends her lesson with Syrio Forel, feeling distraught over Jory's death. Syrio emphasizes the importance of being ready to fight at all times, regardless of one's mood. He wisely points out that being prepared for battle is crucial during times of sorrow, more so than during moments of joy and tranquility. In King's Landing, an additional scene unfolds as Arya and Syrio engage in another session of sword practice, highlighting Syrio's iconic quote exclusive to the series, "There's only one thing we say to death, not today." During a meeting of the small council in King's Landing, a group of refugees arrive to share the tragic news of their villages being destroyed. Eddard Stark listens intently as they speak of a fearsome knight causing havoc in the Riverlands. It has become clear to him that this knight is none other than Sir Gregor Clegane, known as the Mountain, who was likely acting on orders from the Lannisters to punish the Riverlands, currently under the rule of House Tully, the family of his wife, Catelyn, and where Tyrion Lannister is being held captive. The villagers, including Joss, recount in the book how the Mountain not only attacked the Murmur's Ford, but also plundered the holdfast of the Sharer and Wendish town. Ned's decision to denounce the Mountain, stripping him of honours, titles, estates, and sentencing him to death is the culmination of a deep-seated vendetta. The literature clarifies that Ned is deeply troubled by the Mountain's evasion of justice for heinous acts of and murder against the Mad King's blameless daughter-in-law, as well as the killing of her offspring. Despite King Robert's advice to make peace with the Lannisters, Ned could not ignore the injustice unfolding before him. He makes the bold decision to strip Gregor Clegane of his knighthood, land, and titles, and dispatched Lord Beric Dondarrion with 100 knights to arrest and execute him in the name of the king. Additionally, he commands Grand Maester Pycelle to summon Lord Tywin Lannister to court, insisting that he explain his bannerman's action or face being deemed an enemy of the crown and a traitor. While some like Peter Baelish and Grand Maester Pycelle express concerns about the severity of Ned's action against the Lannisters, the Stark Patriarch remains resolute in his pursuit of justice. In the book, Ned does not call upon Tywin to appear at court and explain the Mountain's wrongdoing in the Riverlands. Also, Loras Tyrell offers to take on the mission of capturing the Mountain. However, Ned Stark declines to assign him the responsibility. The book recounts how Ned orders Thoros of Myr, Sir Gladen Wild, and Lord Lothar Mallory to gather 20 soldiers each and accompany Beric Dondarrion on his quest. However, in the television adaptation, none of these characters are referenced. Bronn engages in a defensive battle, biding his time until Varadis becomes fatigued from the weight of his full armor. In the book, Varadis meets his end when he is stabbed in the chest while being held down by a statue that Bronn has toppled over him. However, in the show, Varadis endures multiple injuries, including a stab to the neck. In the book, Bronn sustains minor injuries and loses a tooth. In the show, Bronn inflicts wounds on Varadis before ultimately delivering a fatal blow, causing Varadis to plummet out of the Moondoor and into a 1,000-foot drop. The Moondoor featured in the television series is depicted as a gaping hole in the ground within the High Hall of the Eyrie. Also, Varadis' demise is portrayed with more intensity compared to the book. Bronn and Tyrion are granted permission to leave without any further confrontation. Lysa criticizes Bronn for his lack of honorable fighting, to which Bronn concedes but points out that Varadis did fight honorably. With his innocence proven in the eyes of the god, Tyrion retrieves his gold from Sir Roderick and hands it over to Maud. When Robin inquires if they can make the little man fly now, Tyrion responds by saying, "This little man is going home." Prince Joffrey approaches Sansa to offer his sincere apology for the altercation that occurred on the King's Road. In a gesture of affection, he refers to her as his beloved lady and presents her with a beautiful necklace. Sansa graciously accepts his apology, and they appear to have resolved their differences. Little does Sansa know, the Queen had orchestrated Joffrey's apology long before their meeting. Sansa is too young and foolish to realize that Joffrey doesn't really like her. Meanwhile, Ross, a prostitute often seen by Theon, leaves Winterfell for King's Landing on a turnip cart. Theon tries to convince her to stay, but she explains that with war looming, the men of Winterfell would soon depart and never return, making her departure a necessary economic choice. Theon gives her a coin as she leaves, expressing his regret at her departure. The book does not portray any interaction between Ross and Theon as she departs for King's Landing, let alone having a conversation with Theon about it. Ned makes the decision to send his daughters back to Winterfell. In the novel, a major altercation occurs between Arya and Sansa before Ned discusses their departure from King's Landing. However, in the TV series adaptation, this conflict is omitted from the storyline. In the episode, Arya is distressed about leaving her beloved teacher, Syrio. In the books, Ned informs Arya that there is a chance Syrio could accompany them if he decides to join Ned's retinue. This detail is omitted from the television episode. Sansa argues that no one cares about her dancing instructor, as the real concern is breaking off her engagement to Joffrey. Ned reassures Sansa that he will find another match for her. However, Sansa is adamant about marrying Joffrey and having children with him. This revelation causes Ned to rethink things, and he revisits the book that Jon Arryn was studying before his death. Upon examining the section on House Baratheon, Ned discovers a pattern where all Baratheon offspring have black hair, except Cersei and Robert's children, who are all blonde. Viserys, in a state of intoxication, resentment, and fury, disrupts a celebration gathering held in honor of Daenerys and Drogo. He forcefully insists on receiving his compensation for offering Daenerys to Drogo. In a fit of rage, he unsheaths his sword, a grave offense punishable by death in the Revet city, and menaces Dany and her unborn child, with Eerie translating his threats to Drogo. Drogo promises to give Viserys a magnificent golden crown that will inspire fear in those who see it. Viserys is initially pleased by this prospect, but his joy is short-lived as Drogo's blood rider, Kotho, violently grabs him, breaks his arm, and forces him to the ground. Drogo then proceeds to melt down his own golden belt of medallions in a pot. Viserys desperately pleads with Daenerys for help, but Ser Jorah advises her to turn away. Despite his warning, Daenerys refuses to avert her gaze. She witnesses the brutal act as Khal Drogo pours molten gold over Viserys' head, causing him to scream in excruciating pain. Viserys collapses to the ground with a loud thud, his life coming to a gruesome end. In the aftermath of her brother's horrific death, Daenerys coldly declares that Viserys, having been killed by fire, was not a true dragon. The demise of Viserys is reminiscent of a historical custom practiced by the Mongols under the rule of Genghis Khan. They were infamous for executing their royal or noble adversaries by pouring liquefied gold over their heads or forcing it down their throats. The Mongols followed this brutal method as they had a strict code against spilling the blood of nobility. In contrast, Drogo chose to follow a similar path by using molten gold to punish Viserys because it was forbidden to wield a blade within the sacred Dothraki city of Vaes Dothrak. After Drogo carries out Viserys' execution, he quietly remarks, "A crown for a cart king." In the novels, Viserys is ridiculed and referred to as a cart king due to his inability to endure riding horses as the Dothraki do, opting to travel on a cart instead. In the book, during the celebratory gathering where Viserys is met with his infamous golden crown, 2 additional cows are in attendance as their khalasars are situated in Vaes Dothrak as well. Drogo engages in conversation about Viserys with these fellow cows. However, in the television adaptation, no other cows make an appearance. The title of the episode, A Golden Crown, also holds a deeper significance than Viserys' demise. During this episode, Ned comes to the realization that Cersei's children are not actually fathered by Robert, as they all have blonde hair, which is often linked to a golden crown. Cersei's fabricated tale about bearing Robert a black-haired son, a detail not found in the books, was likely included to emphasize the fact that Robert's legitimate offspring would have inherited his dark hair. At the edge of the Riverlands, Lord Tywin Lannister has gathered an army of 60,000 soldiers, preparing to confront the Starks and seek retribution for Catelyn's capture of his son Tyrion Lannister. Tywin's portrayal in the book includes a description of him as having a shaved head, thick golden sideburns like the mane of a lion, and green eyes with specks of gold. This description diverges significantly from his appearance in the television adaptation. Inside his command tent, as he meticulously skins a dead stag, Tywin confides in his eldest son, Jaime, about the critical nature of the impending conflict. In his very first scene as Tywin in Game of Thrones, Charles Dance learned to skin a real stag, a task not originally meant for his character in the books. The scene, which was initially meant for the character Randall Tarly in the books, but was replaced by Tywin's introduction. It also took about 50 takes to get the skinning right. Tywin's brutal slaying of a stag, the emblem of House Baratheon, definitely has some symbolic connections. Tywin emphasizes that their family's destiny hangs in the balance. They will either establish a lasting dynasty or face execution, akin to the fall of the Targaryens. In a decisive move, Tywin instructs Jaime to lead 30,000 men in a siege of Riverrun, the ancestral home of Catelyn and the stronghold of House Tully. Jaime is puzzled by his father's unwavering commitment to the unloved and scorned Tyrion, but Tywin's loyalty to the Lannister name supersedes all else. Despite regarding Tyrion as the black sheep of their kin, any slight against their family honor must be met with severe consequences to maintain their reputation for strength and unity. The interaction between Tywin and Jaime Lannister in the camp is not depicted in the source material. In the books, Tywin informs Tyrion that despite his lack of affection for him, he is obligated to join the war as no one can disrespect the Lannisters without consequences. In response, Tyrion recites the iconic house motto, "Hear me roar." During the show, Tywin entrusts Jaime with 30,000 soldiers, whereas in the book, Jaime's army is comprised of approximately half that size, with 12,000 infantry and 2,000 to 3,000 cavalry. Lord Eddard Stark confronts Cersei Lannister, revealing that he is aware of the truth behind Jon Arryn's death. Cersei's children are not fathered by King Robert, but are actually the result of an incestuous relationship between Cersei and her brother Jaime. Cersei does not deny the accusation and even takes pride in their forbidden love, drawing a parallel to the Targaryen tradition of sibling marriage. She also confesses her contempt for Robert, dating back to their wedding night when he mistook her for another woman. During their wedding, Cersei recalled Robert having a beard. However, the books mention that Robert was actually clean-shaven at that time, and only decided to grow a beard later in life to conceal his double chin. An enraged Ned demands that Cersei take her children and flee the city before Robert returns from his hunting trip, where he plans to reveal the truth. Cersei mocks Ned for not seizing the throne himself after the fall of King's Landing, but Ned stands by his decision. Before leaving, Cersei warns Ned with a chilling reminder of the ruthless nature of the power struggle. When you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die. There is no middle ground. In the book, Ned organizes a meeting with Cersei in the Godswood of the Red Keep to confront her about Jaime, mentioning that it is a place where the gods can witness their exchange. Cersei tries to seduce Ned in the book, but when he rejects her advances by suggesting she tried to do the same thing to Jon Arryn and failed, which resulted in him killing her, she slaps him in anger. She confesses that she never bore any of Robert's children and admits to having had the one time she became pregnant by him. Robert was completely unaware of both the pregnancy and the termination. In the book, Ned cautions Cersei about his plans and suggests she flee to the Free Cities, Summer Isle, or the Port of Ibn. Despite Cersei viewing this exile as a harsh punishment, Ned argues that it is a gentler fate compared to what her father did to Rhaegar's children. Littlefinger is giving instructions to Ross and Armikar, the new arrivals at one of his brothels, on how to cater to their clients and ensure their satisfaction. Despite their invitation for him to join them, Littlefinger declines, revealing that he has eyes only for a particular woman. He recounts a tale from his past, where he loved a woman so deeply that he even engaged in a duel for her affection. Unfortunately, he lost the duel and came to the realization that he could never attain power through honorable means, as those in control would never allow him to compete on fair terms. When Ross asks about his desires, Littlefinger cryptically replies, "Oh, everything." This scene doesn't happen in the book. It's purely for the pleasure of the audience, or so the show creators believed. The term sexposition was coined for this specific episode, highlighting the characters revealing important information while sexual activity or nudity is taking place in the background. In Winterfell, Theon Greyjoy attempts to bully Osha, the wildling woman captured in the recent raid. He insists that she refer to him as "my lord," but she is unimpressed with his antics. She points out that he is not entitled to this, as his father is still alive. Maester Luwin dismisses Theon and questions Osha about why her band crossed the wall and were fleeing as far south as south goes. she claims that the White Walkers have awoken after a millennium asleep and are coming south. The show suggests that the ancient beings aged over 8,000 years were first designed to safeguard the children of the forest from man, as we saw in Season 6 of the show. In the Red Keep, a distraught and bloodied Renly encounters Ned and informs him of Robert's grievous injuries sustained from a boar attack, indicating that Robert's chance of survival are slim. Ned later discovers Robert expressing regret to Joffrey about his shortcomings as a father. Ned, out of compassion, decides not to reveal his findings to Robert in order to spare him unnecessary pain during his final moments. Robert tasks Ned with drafting a letter designating him as the Lord Protector of the realm until Joffrey reaches maturity. However, Ned deliberately omits Joffrey's name from the document, referring instead to the rightful heir. Additionally, Robert requests Ned to call off the assassination plot against Daenerys Targaryen. In the novel, as Robert lay on his deathbed, he confesses that he believes the gods sent the boar to punish him for commanding Daenerys' death. He admits to being a terrible king, comparing himself to Ares. This revelation is not depicted in the show. The portrayal of Robert's hunting party in the series was criticized by author George R.R. Martin as his least favorite moment. Due to budget constraints, the depiction fell short of Martin's grand vision, which included a large group of men, pavilions, huntsmen, dogs, and horns blowing, the true regal way of hunting. He also hated that the king was shown simply walking through the woods with only 3 friends holding spears. However, Martin found redemption in a more realistic portrayal of a hunting party in House of the Dragons episode, second of his name 11 years later. After exiting the chamber, Ned engages in conversation with Varys and Sir Barristan Selmy. Selmy expresses regret over allowing Robert to face the boar alone, blaming himself for not fulfilling his duty. However, Ned consoles Barristan by emphasizing that nobody could have prevented Robert from his own actions. Varys subtly hints at Lancel Lannister's role in keeping the king drunk during the hunt by innocently mentioning the wine. This revelation implies that Robert's judgment was impaired and unreliable. Furthermore, Varys warns that it is too late to prevent the imminent assassination attempt on Daenerys. In Vaes Dothrak, Daenerys is trying to persuade Khal Drogo to consider launching an invasion of the Seven Kingdoms. However, Drogo is hesitant to make the journey across the Narrow Sea, even though there are plenty of ships available in the Free Cities to assist with the endeavor. He believes that a true leader doesn't need a fancy iron chair, but rather just a trusty horse. Accompanied by Ser Jorah Mormont and her handmaidens, Daenerys visits the bustling marketplace. During her visit, Daenerys encounters individuals with distant East Asian features. These individuals hail from Yi, a distant region to the east of Essos. She implores Jorah to help sway her husband's mind, reminding him that the Seven Kingdoms rightfully belong to her as her birthright. Jorah, in turn, points out that her ancestor Aegon the Conqueror was able to conquer 6 of the 7 kingdoms because of his powerful dragons. A message from Varys offering Jorah a royal pardon for his past crimes causes him to realize that his days as a spy may be numbered. When a wine seller tries to poison Daenerys by offering her a tainted vintage from the arbor, Jorah intervenes just in time to prevent her from consuming it. The wine seller attempts to flee, but Ricardo swiftly brings him down using a bolo to entangle his ankles. Daenerys was handed a glass of Dornish wine, symbolically referencing the 7th Kingdom. Dorne was the only kingdom that resisted the Targaryen invasion during the First Dornish War by employing guerrilla warfare tactics instead of engaging in direct combat. This unconventional approach led to a prolonged conflict until the Targaryens eventually relented, allowing Dorne to maintain its independence. It was only after 2 centuries, through a strategic marriage, that Dorne peacefully joined the rule of the Iron Throne. Jon Snow and Samwell Tarly are keeping a vigilant eye from the top of the wall when they notice Benjen's horse coming back alone. Jon is filled with dread as there is no trace of Benjen anywhere. In the book, the members of the Night's Watch are also anxious due to Benjen's prolonged disappearance. After some time, Lord Commander Jorah Mormont officially designates the new recruits as sworn brothers of the Night's Watch. He assigns duty to each trainee, but Jon is disappointed to learn that he is being assigned to the stewards, and not the rangers as he had hoped. Instead, he'll be serving directly under the Lord Commander as his personal steward. Despite Jon's attempts to argue his case to Maester Aemon, who has chosen Sam as his own steward, he is met with indifference. However, Sam proposes to Jon that while this decision may be orchestrated by Sir Alliser Thorne to punish Jon, it also presents an opportunity for the Lord Commander to prepare Jon for leadership. The pledge that members of the Night's Watch must take in the TV series closely mirrors the oath found in the novels, with only one line missing. I am the fire that burns against the cold, the light that brings the dawn, the horn that wakes the sleepers, which was omitted from the show. Sam and other new members of the Night's Watch undergo their training and become sworn brothers. Sam is specifically tasked with serving Maester Aemon. However, in the books, only a handful of recruits such as Jon, Grenn, and Pip successfully complete their training, while the majority remain as recruits. Jon, fearing for Sam's safety once he is out of sight, implores Maester Aemon to take Sam under his wing as a steward, due to his intelligence and education. After some consideration, Maester Aemon agrees to Jon's request, and this is what causes Maester Aemon to convince the Lord Commander to take Jon on as his squire. Pip is appointed to the stewards instead of the rangers. Meanwhile, Rast continues to serve as a recruit in the books. In the show, Aemon is delegating tasks instead of Bowen Marsh as depicted in the books, who will later help assassinate Jon. The character of First Builder Othel Yarrick is also notably absent from the scene. Both Jon and Sam are taken aback when Piper reveals that he was sent to the Wall for refusing to provide sexual favors to a lord, rather than for theft of cheese to feed his sister as he had claimed. The truth is, there is nothing just about being sent to the Wall. Most of the recruits come from humble backgrounds, with many having criminal pasts and limited literacy skills. Jon, as a worshipper of the old gods, is allowed to say his oath of fealty to the Night's Watch in front of a heart tree in the haunted forest. Sam decides to take the oath with Jon, as the 7 gods his father worshipped have never seemed to answer him. The ancient religion of the First Men, known as the Old Gods of the Forest, were heavily persecuted following the invasion of Westeros by the Andals 6,000 years ago. The faith of the 7 became the prominent religion across most of the continent. However, there are exceptions in the north and among the hill tribes of the Vale, where the descendants of the First Men successfully resisted the Andal incursion and maintained their original customs. Accompanied by Othel Yarrick and 3 more Brothers of the Watch, Sam and Jon take their oaths. Then they are acknowledged by the others as members of the Watch. Ghost finds a severed hand in the woods and brings it back to Jon and a horrified Sam. In the novel, Bowen Marsh is the one who joins Jon and Sam on their visit to the weirwood trees. In the capital city of King's Landing, Renly approaches Ned and proposes giving him 100 soldiers to apprehend Joffrey, emphasizing that any delay will only befit Cersei's plans. However, Ned refuses to compromise his honor by resorting to violence in the Red Keep and using innocent children as hostages. Renly suggests that he would make a capable king, but Ned reminds him that Stannis, as the older brother, is the rightful heir to the throne. In the books, Renly suggests to Ned that they should detain Joffrey along with his siblings, just like in the TV series. However, Renly does not propose that he should claim the throne. The topic of Stannis is not brought up by either Renly or Ned. Ned then drafts a letter detailing his discoveries and sends it to Stannis at Dragonstone, his stronghold. Tomard, a Winterfell guard, is assigned a crucial mission to deliver a letter to Stannis at Dragonstone. The letter bears news that Stannis is the rightful heir to the throne. According to Ned, Stannis commanded troops in battle on 2 occasions. This likely includes the defense of Storm's End during Robert's rebellion against the Mad King, as well as the confrontation at Fair Isle during the Greyjoy uprising. Shortly after, Littlefinger arrives and Ned confides in him about Joffrey's true lineage. Littlefinger proposes a plan to keep quiet, accept Joffrey as king, and manipulate him as a puppet ruler. If Joffrey becomes unmanageable, they could reveal the truth and crown Renly instead. Littlefinger elaborates on why he believes Stannis is not fit for the throne. He argues that Stannis will replace the current small council with his own supporters, and predicts that Stannis' rule will lead to conflict. Littlefinger claims that Stannis will eliminate Cersei and her children to solidify his claim, sparking a war with Tywin and the houses loyal to Castle Rock. Unlike his forgiving brother, Stannis might seek retribution against Mace Tyrell, Paxter Redwyn, and Balon Greyjoy for past grievances. He also suggests that Ned should proceed with marrying Sansa to Joffrey, Arya to Tommen, and Robb to Marcella as originally intended. Ned views this suggestion as treasonous. Littlefinger acknowledges Ned's authority as regent and protector of the realm, but points out that he lacks the necessary forces to challenge Cersei. He emphasizes the importance of gaining the City's Watch loyalty to overpower Cersei's supporters. Littlefinger grasps that Ned, being an honorable man, cannot directly ask for bribery, but he agrees to take the necessary actions to secure the City Watch's allegiance. After capturing the wine cellar, Ser Jorah warns Daenerys that Robert Baratheon will relentlessly pursue her and her future offspring. Drogo swiftly enters the tent, eyeing the cellar before turning to Daenerys to ensure her safety. He offers Jorah his choice of any horse as a reward for thwarting the assassination attempt. Infuriated, Drogo declares in Dothraki that his army will conquer the poison water and claim the Iron Throne for his son. The following morning, Drogo's Khalasar departs Vaes Dothrak with the wine cellar bound naked to Daenerys' horse, forced to walk until he collapses from exhaustion and meets his demise. Ned is summoned to the throne room in King's Landing following the death of King Robert. In the book, it was Pycelle, not the royal steward, who reveals to Eddard that Robert has passed away. Littlefinger and Varys are waiting for him, along with Commander Janos Slynt and the City Watch. Varys informs Ned that Renly has fled the city with Sir Loras Tyrell and others. In the throne room, Joffrey demands loyalty from his counselors and subjects. Instead of pledging allegiance to Joffrey, Ned proclaims himself as Lord Protector of the realm. Cersei tears up the proclamation and offers Ned a chance to return to Winterfell if he bends the knee. Ned refuses, stating that Joffrey is not the rightful heir to the throne, and orders Slynt to arrest the Queen and her son. However, the City Watch turns on Ned's men and Littlefinger betrays him, holding a knife to his throat with a warning about trust. Unfortunately, Tomard meets a tragic end in the throne room before he can complete the task of delivering the letter to Stannis. In the written records, it is revealed that Stannis had previously collaborated with Jon Arryn to uncover the truth about Cersei's children, confirming that Jaime is their true father. During the ceremony in the throne room after Robert's death, Joffrey is officially declared as the new king and recognized as Joffrey of houses Baratheon and Lannister. He stands out as the sole character in the series to be acknowledged as a member of two noble houses at the same time. By the way, Jorah is called Jorah the Andal. This is because the Andals were the same people who brought the faith of the Seven to Westeros 6,000 years ago, and eventually became the predominant ethnic group on the continent. Although people from Essos commonly refer to those from Westeros as Andals, technically this is not accurate in Jorah's case. Jorah hails from the north, a region that was never conquered by the Andals, unlike the rest of Westeros. The Lannister soldiers successfully eliminate the Stark guards and household staff. Sansa and Septa Mordane overhear the sounds of the commotion. When they come face to face with Lannister guardsmen led by Sandor Clegane, Septa Mordane instructs Sansa to flee and secure herself in her chamber while she stays behind to confront them. Despite her efforts, Sandor eventually locates Sansa and takes her into custody. However, in the book, Sansa and Septa Mordane are separated when the violent incident unfolds. Distraught over her father's decision to cancel her betrothal and send her back to Winterfell, Sansa seeks help from Cersei to persuade him to reconsider. This prompts Cersei to hasten her schemes to prevent it. Subsequently, Cersei orders the Kingsguard to detain Sansa in a tower room, preemptively imprisoning her before the violent event occurs. In another part of the castle, more Lannister guardsmen, this time under the command of Sir Mirren Trent, disrupt a water dancing lesson between Syrio Forel and Arya. Syrio holds Arya back, questioning why Lord Eddard would send Lannister men after her. Arya adamantly refuses to comply with their demands, and when they attempt to enforce their will, Syrio effortlessly disarms and incapacitates all of the lightly armored guardsmen with his wooden training sword. He urges Arya to escape as he bravely faces off against Trent, declaring that as the first Sword of Braavos, he does not flee from a fight. The fate of Syrio remains uncertain after this confrontation. In the book, the soldiers facing Syrio are less heavily protected, allowing Syrio to inflict more damage with his wooden sword by delivering fatal stabs to their necks and eyes. However, in the series, he only manages to disarm and wound them. Maisie William inquired with the creators, Dave and Dan, about Forel's potential survival. However, they firmly stated, no, he did not make it. Arya hurries towards the stables, anticipating the men who were meant to accompany her to the ship bound for Winterfell. To her dismay, she discovers that the men had all met their demise. However, amidst the chaos, she uncovers her beloved sword, Needle, tucked away in the depths of her trunk. A stable boy attempts to seize her. Reacting swiftly, Arya turns around with Needle drawn, inadvertently impaling and killing the boy. Shocked by her own actions, Arya flees the scene in horror. In the show, Arya's stable boy's death appears to be more of an unintentional incident, but in the book, it was deliberate. Multiple events unfold in the narrative depicting the brutal annihilation of the Stark clan by the Lannisters, and Arya gets angry at all the dead Stark guardsmen who claim they could kill multiple Lannisters for each Northman, yet all Arya sees are dead Northmen, mostly because they were taken by surprise. With Needle in hand, Arya makes her way out of the stables. Having explored the Red Keep extensively in the past, Arya is familiar with a hidden tunnel beneath the castle. This secret passageway is her escape route, which she once discovered while chasing cats and tailing two suspicious individuals. Varys pays a visit to Ned Stark in his prison cell deep within the dungeons. He expresses disbelief at Ned's decision to warn Cersei Lannister of his plans. Ned explains that he did so out of a desire to spare Cersei's children from the wrath of King Robert, who would have surely had them killed upon learning the truth. Varys bluntly points out that Ned's act of mercy ultimately led to King Robert's demise, much to Ned's regret. Furthermore, Varys informs Ned that Catelyn Stark has released Tyrion Lannister from her custody, leaving the Stark family with no leverage to negotiate for Ned's release. Ned proposes the idea of eliminating him, to which Varys responds, "Not today, my lord." Before leaving, Ned asks Varys about his true allegiance. Varys shows an unusual moment of sincerity and responds, "The realm, my lord. Someone must." In the book, Varys discloses to Ned that eventually Cersei would have taken action to eliminate Robert, as he was becoming difficult to control. She needed to remove him in order to focus on dealing with Renly and Stannis. In the book, Varys makes a solitary visit to the captive Ned Stark. Cersei and the few members of the small council, including Grand Maester Pycelle, Varys, and Littlefinger, call upon Sansa to deliver the news that her father has been charged with treason. They subtly influence Sansa to compose a letter to her brother Robb, urging him to peacefully submit to Joffrey. They insinuate that Ned's future could hinge on the actions of his son and the Northern Lord. Reluctantly, Sansa agrees to pen the letter. Sadly, the show makes a big deal about this letter in Season 7, which is really dumb since it was obviously written under duress. Jon and Sam arrive at Castle Black, accompanied by their companions and two lifeless bodies. The deceased individuals have been identified as Jafer Flowers and Othor, members of Benjen Stark's missing expedition. Despite the bodies showing signs of being deceased for a while, Sam remarks they do not emit the foul odor of decay. Sam and the other brothers present have many more insights to share regarding the deceased rangers mentioned in the book, apart from noting the absence of any foul odors. The dogs and horses timidly avoid the lifeless bodies. The blood of the deceased bodies has completely evaporated. Despite the fact that the bodies have been exposed for several days, they remain untouched by scavengers or maggots. Their garments are marked with blood, yet there are no traces of blood on the ground in close proximity to them, despite the gravity of their wounds. Othor's corpse is adorned with a hunting horn, yet the rangers did not detect any sound of a horn being blown. Mormont, Jeremy Riker, and other members of the Night's Watch carefully inspect the two lifeless bodies discovered by Ghost. It is not until after the thorough examination at the scene that the bodies are transported to Castle Black. Riker, not Sam, is the one who realizes that the bodies are not emitting a foul odor. John and several of his fellow sworn brothers urge Lord Commander Jorah Mormont to cremate the bodies, but he insisted on having Maester Aemon examine them first. John is then summoned to Mormont's chambers, where he learned of his father Eddard's arrest and imprisonment. In a state of shock, John reads the letter himself, confirming the devastating news. Struggling to come to terms with his father's betrayal, John attempts to leave, only to be stopped by Mormont, who reminds him of his duty to the Night's Watch. When John expresses concern for his sisters, Mormont reassures him that they are most likely unharmed. In the book, as John walks into the common hall, rather than being met with an uncomfortable silence, he is met with words of encouragement and support from his friends. They assure him that the accusations against Ned are baseless fabrications. Later, Alliser Thorne provokes John by insulting his father as a traitor, referring to him as a traitor's bastard, instead of just a bastard. Enraged, John attempts to attack Thorne with a knife, but is restrained by Gren and Pip. Commander Mormont witnesses the confrontation and punishes John by confining him to his quarters. That night, John is awoken by his direwolf Ghost whimpering and scratching at the door. Sensing danger, John and Ghost rush the Lord Commander's chambers, where they encounter a wight, a reanimated corpse of a fallen Night's Watchman. In the book, as John makes his way towards the Lord Commander's chambers, he stumbles upon the lifeless body of a guard. It is evident that the guard has been viciously attacked, as his head has been grotesquely turned in an unnatural direction. Despite John's efforts to stab the wight with his sword, it remains unharmed as it simply pulls out the sword. Mormont arrives to investigate the disturbance. In a desperate move, John grabs Mormont's oil lamp and throws it at the wight, finally destroying it. During the episode, John defeats the undead creature by hurling a lantern towards it, injuring his arm in the process. The wound heals gradually, but leaves behind prominent scars. In the book, John covers the wight with blazing curtains to vanquish it. After John slices through the wight's hand, the detached limb displays a life of its own. It continues to battle independently, unexpectedly latching on to John's calf. With great effort, John is able to eventually remove the grip from his leg. Showrunners Dave and Dan enjoyed playing pranks on their cast members by teasing them about the fates of their characters. For this particular episode, they tricked Kit Harington by sending him a fake script where Jon Snow suffers a gruesome fate while trying to put out a fire in the Lord Commander's quarters. The script described Jon's hair being burnt off completely to the scalp, his forehead skin melting from the intense heat, and his body covered in painful blisters and oozing sores. Dan and Dave made Harington believe that these changes were requested by the studio to make his character's storyline more intense and distinct from other fantasy series like Harry Potter. Harington was taken aback by this unexpected turn of events and realized that these alterations would require him to spend long hours in the makeup chair for the rest of his time on the show. The next day, the two lifeless bodies are completely incinerated. Sam recalls reading in a book that the deceased are brought back to life by the White Walker's touch, and only flames can put an end to these beings. He prays that the wall is strong and tall enough to withstand the impending attack of the walkers. Robb is informed by Sansa, who is currently in King's Landing, to swear loyalty to King Joffrey. Maester Luwin suspects that the letter is not actually from Sansa, but rather from the Queen. Robb dismisses the request and quickly sends out messages to call upon the Northern Lords and their armies to gather at Winterfell. Ravens are seen flying in all directions, carrying Robb's urgent message throughout the north. Robb is angry with Sansa, but he knows what position she is in and what would happen to her if she doesn't do what the Queen demands. Catelyn expresses her anger towards Lysa at the Eyrie for two main reasons. Firstly, she is upset that Lysa did not inform her immediately about Eddard's arrest. Secondly, she is frustrated that Lysa refuses to consider calling upon the Knights of the Vale for war. Despite Lysa being the one who initiated the conflict by implicating the Lannisters in Jon Arryn's death, she believes that war is not beneficial for the Vale. Instead, Lysa wants the Knights to remain in the Vale to protect her son and their lord. In the book, the letter that has been dispatched to the Eyrie is not about Ned Stark. Instead, the message originates from Edmure, who reveals that Jaime Lannister is amassing troops at Castle Rock. Edmure further discloses that he has ordered Lord Vance and Lord Piper to protect the pass below the Golden Tooth. Instead, Lord Manderley discloses information about Ned Stark's arrest, along with the tragic news of Robert's death, to Catelyn upon her arrival at White Harbour as she makes her journey back from the Vale. The book does not depict any dialogue between Catelyn and Lysa regarding Ned and the impending conflict. In the book, Catelyn proposes to Lysa the idea of sending her son to be fostered at Winterfell for a period of time. In response, Lysa warns Catelyn that if she attempts to take her son away, she will be let out through the Moon Door. Lord Yohn Royce, rather than Catelyn, insists that the Knights of the Vale unite with the Stark's forces. However, Lysa declines the request. Tyrion and Bronn have made their way to the far reaches of the Vale, where they find themselves surrounded by members of the Hill Tribes, under the command of a fierce warrior named Shagga. As Bronn and Tyrion stroll through the forest, Tyrion decides to whistle Beethoven's Sixth Symphony. Initially, facing the threat of being killed, Tyrion uses his persuasive skills to sway the tribes in believing that House Lannister is actually an adversary of House Arryn and its rulers. In the book, Tyrion and Bronn have gotten themselves in trouble after Bronn hunted down a goat for their meal. The clansmen insist that the goat belongs to them, declaring, "Our mountain, our goat." In the show, Tyrion proposes a strategic alliance that would enable the tribes to seek revenge against House Arryn and claim control over the territories of the Vale. The Hill Tribes eagerly accept the offer and agree to accompany Tyrion and Bronn towards the gathering Lannister forces in the west. In the book, while traversing the rugged terrains of the mountain, Tyrion shares with Bronn the story of his past marriage to Tysha. This intimate conversation differs from the televised version, where it only takes place after they have arrived at Tywin's camp. Bronn curiously inquires how Tyrion was so certain that he would stand by his side. Tyrion humbly admits that he did not have absolute certainty, but rather assumed that as a mercenary, Bronn's loyalty could be swayed by the promise of riches. In Essos, Khal Drogo has sworn to claim the Iron Throne and has begun his campaign towards the Narrow Sea. The Dothraki pillage a village in Lizar, a tranquil land to the southeast of Vast Dothrak. In order to fund their impending war, they resort to raiding villages and capturing people to be sold as slaves, procuring the necessary funds to hire ships for their Khalasar invasion of Westeros. Despite Ser Jorah and others attempting to explain the brutal reality to Daenerys, she is appalled by the violence inflicted on the villages and the atrocities committed against the women. She commands the raiding to cease and takes it upon herself to protect the women from harm. The Dothraki, accustomed to claiming the spoils of war, grow resentful of Daenerys' interference. She defiantly asserts her right to safeguard the women they encounter. The disgruntled warriors voice their grievances to Khal Drogo, only to find him amused by his wife's boldness. He permits Daenerys to keep the women she has chosen, instructing the warriors to seek other spoils. One defiant man accuses Drogo of being enslaved by a foreign woman in a fit of rage. In the book, Daenerys intervenes to protect a young girl named Ero from being by Mago and his group of warriors. Ero becomes loyal to Daenerys, although this character does not appear in the show. Mago expresses his dissatisfaction with Daenerys through Hago, but Drogo ignores his complaints and there is no confrontation between them. This conflict was added to the show at the request of Jason Momoa to showcase Drogo's fighting skills. Drogo is wounded in a battle against one of Khal Ogo's Blood Riders, and the injury is more severe than depicted. Khal Drogo silences the dissent by slaying Mago. the aggrieved fighter who dares to confront him. In the heat of battle, Drogo sustains a serious injury to his chest. Despite his attempts to downplay the severity of the wound, Daenerys demands that it be tended to. She entrusts the care of Drogo to Mirri Maz Dur, a skilled healer among the women she saved, much to the disdain of Drogo's loyal blood riders, who mockingly label the healer as a witch. The wound that Mirri Maz Dur infects was worse than the one shown in the series, which was superficial. In Winterfell, Robb hosts a grand feast to welcome his newly arrived bannerman. Great John Umber arrogantly assumes he will lead the vanguard, and is offended by the idea of following behind a Glover. He even threatens to leave the gathering. In response, Robb sternly warns Greatjon that he'll be punished for betraying House Stark after their conflict with the Lannisters. When Greatjon tries to draw his weapon in anger, Robb's fierce direwolf Greywind swiftly intervenes, biting off 2 of his fingers. Robb reminds everyone of the consequences of going against their liege lord with a weapon in hand. However, he cleverly diffuses the tension by joking that Greatjon was only trying to help him cut his meat. The Greatjon, realizing the error of his ways, laughs heartedly and agrees to follow Robb's orders. Bran, who witnesses the entire confrontation, is left in shock. Before parting ways with Bran and Rickon, Robb reassures them, though Rickon remains doubtful about ever seeing his family again. Bran kneels in front of the heart tree, lost in his prayers when Osha approaches him. She informs him that the old gods are listening to his words and reveal that the wildlings also worship the same deities. Osha expresses her sorrow over the fact that the South has severed ties with its history. The weirwoods in the southern lands were cut down long ago, leaving the southerners oblivious to the awakening forces in the north. Their conversation is suddenly interrupted by Hodor, who had been bathing and forgot to dress himself. Osha muses about the possibility of giant ancestry in Hodor before Bran dismisses him. Intrigued, Bran inquires about the existence of giants beyond the Wold. Osha confirms their presence, along with various other creatures, some of whom are not so friendly. She emphasizes the importance of Robb's army heading north instead of south. For centuries leading up to the War of the Five Kings, giants, the children of the forest, and White Walkers have remained unseen. Catelyn and Sir Roderick Castle intercept Robb's army in the neck as it marches south. Robb is filled with joy at the sight of his mother, but refrains from openly displaying affection to maintain his image of strength among his vassals. Catelyn, understanding her son's predicament, waits until the lords have departed before embracing him. She urges Robb to prepare for war, emphasizing that they cannot afford to lose. The fate of Ned, Sansa, and Arya hangs in the balance, as defeat would mean merciless treatment from Tywin Lannister. When Catelyn and Sir Roderick depart from the Vale, Brendan Tully accompanies them on their journey. Upon her arrival at Robb's camp in the book, Catelyn is accompanied by her uncle and the sons of Lord Manderley. She had previously dispatched Roderick to Winterfell to act as the Castellan. Following their discussions, Robb and his Council of Lords deliberate on the path they should take for their upcoming march. There is a debate on whether they should directly confront Tywin's army or first deal with Jaime's forces besieging Riverrun. In order to reach Jaime, they would need to cross the Green Fork of the Trident, with the only viable crossing being at the Twins, controlled by the notoriously difficult Lord Walder Frey. During this time, a scout from the Lannister army is captured by Robb's forces. Robb decides to send the scout back to deliver a message to Lord Tywin, warning him that a formidable force of 20,000 northern soldiers is advancing towards him. Tyrion, Bronn, Shaggar, and the other hill tribesmen reach the Lannister encampment, where they encounter Lord Tywin Lannister and his brother, Sir Kevan, strategizing to confront the approaching Stark army from the north. In the book, Tyrion, Bronn, and the clansmen make their way to the Lannister camp only to find that Tywin and Kevan are not residing in a tent, but rather in a shared space within the inn at the crossroads where Tyrion was abducted. Despite Tyrion's arrival, Tywin remains stoic and shows no visible reaction to his son's arrival. Tywin agrees to accept the hill tribesmen's assistance, but Shaggar makes it clear that they would only join the battle if Tyrion fights alongside them. This condition both pleases and unnerves Tywin, as he recognizes the potential impact of having his son on the battlefield. Shagga makes a bold entrance into the room where the Lannisters are gathered in the book. Despite a guard's attempt to block his way, Shagga easily overpowers him, tossing the guard aside and shattering his sword. This shocking display catches the attention of Tywin and Kevan. Following the gathering at the Red Keep, where King Joffrey presides over court proceedings, a significant announcement is made. Jaina Slynt, the esteemed commander of the City Watch, is to be granted the title of Lord of Harrenhal in recognition of his unwavering loyalty and service. Meanwhile, a shocking decision is made by Cersei, who decides to relieve Sir Barristan Selmy of his duties as the head of the Kingsguard. Despite Selmy's confusion and insistence that Kingsguard members serve for life, Joffrey angrily asserts that Selmy is too old and failed to protect his late father, King Robert Baratheon. The situation worsens for Selmy when he discovers that his position as Lord Commander is to be bestowed upon Jaime Lannister, much to his dismay. In an attempt to salvage the situation, Varys announces that Selmy will be rewarded with a castle and land as a gesture of appreciation for his years of service. However, Selmy, feeling insulted by what he perceives as a mere offer of a place to wither away and be buried, decides to take matters into his own hands. In a bold move, Selmy removes his armor, tosses his sword at Joffrey's feet, and storms out of the court. Before leaving, he boldly declares that he could easily defeat all 5 of the other Kingsguard members present. He then throws down his sword and says this great book-only line, "Here, boy, melt it down and add it to the others if you like. It will do you more good than the swords in the hands of these 5. Perhaps Lord Stannis will chance to sit on it when he takes your throne." Angered by Barristan's parting words, Joffrey deems them treasonous and commands the Goldcloaks to pursue and capture the former knight. Barristan is forced to eliminate 2 members of the City Watch in order to flee the city and escape. In the televised series, he is shown simply departing without incident. Sansa pleads with Joffrey to spare her father's life, suggesting that the medication he was consuming for his leg injury had clouded his judgment when he spoke out against the crown. Touched by her emotional appeal, Joffrey agrees to show mercy to Ned on the condition that he kneels before him and recognizes him as the rightful ruler. Sansa confidently assures Joffrey that her father will comply with his demands. Game of Thrones Episode 9. Varys makes a visit to Eddard Stark in the dungeons beneath the Red Keep. He informs Ned that Sansa pleaded for his life in front of the entire court and that Robb is leading an army from the north. Moreover, the Queen is more worried about the intention of King Robert's brother, Stannis, a ruthless battle commander known for his lack of mercy. To save Sansa's life, Varys advises Ned to confess to treason. In exchange, Cersei will allow him to join his younger brother Benjen and his bastard son Jon Snow on the wall as a member of the Night's Watch. Ned is furious at the suggestion that he would sacrifice his integrity and honor for his own life. However, he begins to reconsider when Varys hints that Sansa may suffer the consequences of his refusal to cooperate. In the book, Varys warns Ned that refusing Cersei's demands would put Sansa's life in danger. He draws a parallel to the tragic death of Rhaenys Targaryen to illustrate the Lannisters' ruthlessness towards children. Ned's cell beneath the Red Keep is actually a repurposed Winterfell crypt set. In the original books, there is only one crucial conversation between Varys and Ned in this location, but it was split into 2 separate scenes for the TV show. Robb's military forces have arrived at the Twins, a heavily protected passage over the Green Fork of the Trident River. Theon Greyjoy intercepts and eliminates messenger birds to prevent any news of their arrival from spreading, but discovers only personal messages meant for distant relatives. In the book, Theon remains stoic as Catelyn reveals the terms of the alliance with the Freys to Robb. Given the danger of entering the castle, Robb opts for Catelyn Stark to step in and engage in negotiations for their safe passage across the river. House Frey, loyal bannermen to Catelyn Stark's father, currently hold the power. Although Lord Walder Frey has not yet engaged in battle, he claims to have prepared his forces for combat and was simply waiting for them all to assemble. In truth, he was waiting to see which side was prevailing before making a decision on whether to enter the conflict. With the Tully's armies defeated and Riverrun under Lannister control, he questions the necessity of supporting Robb Stark and opposing the king. Roose Bolton, rather than Great John Umber or Theon, is the person in the book who cautions Robb about the potential dangers of entering the twins unaccompanied. He highlights the possibility that Lord Frey could betray him by selling him to the Lannisters, imprisoning him, or even taking his life. Apart from Walder Frey feeling that his lord, Hoster Tully, looks down on him, there is a deeper underlying cause for the Freys' hostility towards the Tullys. The Riverlands never had their own kingdom, having been under the rule of the Iron Islands for a long time. When the Targaryens conquered Westeros, they chose the Tullys as the ruling house over the Freys. This decision has led to a lack of respect from House Frey towards House Tully, as they were never their rightful rulers like most other great houses. As a result, they do not bother to adopt the Tully clothing style. Following intense negotiations between Catelyn and Walder, a compromise is reached. The Freys will align themselves with Robb, allow him passage, and contribute troops to his army. In exchange, both Robb and Arya are to marry one of Walder's offspring. Although Robb agrees to the terms, he acknowledges that Arya will not be pleased with the arrangement. Additionally, Robb is required to take Oliver Frey on as a squire. In the book, Arya is promised in marriage to Elmar Frey, and Walder Frey sets an additional requirement for the Starks. He requests that two of his grandsons, known as Big Walder and Little Walder, be brought to Winterfell as wards. Catelyn consents, believing that Bran would benefit from the companionship of children his own age. In Castle Black, Lord Commander Jorah Mormont presents Jon Snow with a Valyrian steel sword called Longclaw as a token of gratitude for saving his life. Mormont reinstates Jon to his former position and reveals that he has sent Sir Alistair Thorne to King's Landing to seek help with the discovery of the White. Longclaw was originally meant for Mormont's son, Sir Jorah Mormont, who brought shame upon himself and fled to Essos. Jorah Mormont has revealed that he decided to alter the pommel of his sword Longclaw from a bear shape to a wolf shape to reflect House Stark. The bear is a significant part of the House Mormont's emblem, as they originate from Bear Island, located off the western coast in the north. As Jon enters the dining hall, the other recruits are impressed by Longclaw, but Samwell Tarly appears distant. Sam pulls Jon aside and informs him about Robb leading an army south to war. Jon contemplates joining Robb, but Maester Aemon reminds him of their duty to the Night's Watch. To Jon's astonishment, Aemon discloses his true identity as Aemon Targaryen, a member of the royal family. Aemon shares his regrets about the tragedies that befell his family during Robert's rebellion. He acknowledges the difficult choices they must make and emphasizes that Jon must decide for himself, bearing the consequences for the rest of his life. Maester Aemon reveals that his father was King Maekar Targaryen, succeeded by Aemon's brother Aegon, and then by Aerys II, the Mad King, who is actually his nephew. The series simplifies the family tree by omitting one member. In the books, Aegon was succeeded by his second son, Jaehaerys, a weak ruler who passed away after just 3 years on the throne, and was followed by his son Aerys, Aemon's great-nephew. However, in the show, Aerys replaces Jaehaerys in the Targaryen lineage. Maester Aemon made the decision to join the Night's Watch in order to distance himself from the political intrigues of the royal court in King's Landing. Although he had taken vows as a maester that forbade him from accepting titles, there were nobles who saw him as a potential threat to his brother, King Aegon, due to his older age and stronger claim to the Iron Throne. Maester Aemon recounts the story of his brother, King Aegon V Targaryen, affectionately known as Aegon the Unlikely, due to the slim chances he had of ever ascending to the throne. Aemon and Aegon's father, Maekar, was originally fourth in line for the Iron Throne. However, fate took a drastic turn when his two older brothers passed away without heirs, as we see in the tales of Dunk and Egg. Maekar was unexpectedly crowned as the king, with his eldest son Aerion being appointed as the crown prince. Unfortunately, Aerion suffered from madness as well and died without any children after consuming wildfire in a misguided attempt to transform into a dragon. Following Maekar's demise, Aemon, the next in line, had renounced all claims to power and inheritance as he had chosen the path of a maester. As a result, his younger brother, Aegon, took the throne as king. In the far eastern lands, Daenerys Targaryen is troubled by the deteriorating condition of her husband Khal Drogo's wound sustained in a battle against Mogo. As Drogo weakens and falls from his horse, a dire omen for the Dothraki, Daenerys makes the bold decision to halt their journey. She commands Kotho to fetch Mirri Maz Dur, a healer, to tend to Drogo's infection. Despite Kotho's reservations about entrusting Drogo's well-being to Mirri Maz Dur, whom he deems a magi or witch, he eventually complies with Daenerys' order. Mirri was born in either Lazar or a mysterious settlement within the vast Dothraki Sea. Raised with the revered temple of the Great Shepherd, the primary deity of the Lazarian people, she received teachings from her mother, who held the esteemed title of God's Wife. Upon reaching adulthood, she embarked on a journey to Asshai, a renowned city where she delved into the mystical arts of spellcasting, and is where Melisandre is from. During her time in Asshai, Mirri honed her skills in shadow binding and delved into the enigmatic realm of blood magic. Additionally, she sought guidance from Maester Marwyn, a distinguished archmaester at the Citadel, who reveals to Samwell Tarly that the Maesters are responsible for killing off all the dragons and House Targaryen. The Lannister military prepares for an upcoming battle, with Tywin strategizing to use the Hill Tribe forces to gain an advantage over the Stark army. He plans to sacrifice the Hill Tribe forces as cannon fodder and instructs his son Tyrion to lead them from the front. Peter Dinklage, who plays Tyrion, entered the 2011 Emmy Awards with this particular episode as his submission for the supporting actor in a drama series category. This marked his first ever Emmy nomination and win. Tyrion, feeling betrayed and enraged, confronts his father for putting his life at risk. In a fit of anger, he retreats to his tent only to find Bronn has arranged for a woman named Shae to keep him company. Tyrion is immediately drawn to her charm and wit. As they prepare to face the enemy in the morning, Bronn leaves to find his own company for the night. Shae hails from the free cities of Essos. However, the casting directors were so impressed with Sibel Keki's audition that they decided to cast her in the role. To accommodate her natural German accent, Shae's backstory was adjusted to have come from Lorath instead. In the book, Podrick Payne is introduced alongside Shae in Tyrion's military tent. Podrick, a lesser-known relative of Sir Ilyn Payne, is not featured in the first season of the TV series, but makes his debut in the second season. Tyrion, Bronn, and Shae engage in a drinking game on the eve before the battle. Tyrion, the observant one, makes guesses about the others, and if he is correct, they have to drink. He correctly deduces that Bronn had ventured beyond the wall and had killed someone before he turned 12. It was a woman, not a man, and it was in self-defense as she was wielding an axe. In the books, there is no indication that Bronn has ever ventured beyond the wall. However, in the television series, he briefly alludes to a work-related trip to the north without providing much detail. It is speculated that he may have served as a guard for smugglers engaged in the profitable trade of weapons for fur with the wildlings, as the wildlings lack the capability to produce their own weapons. Tyrion then tries to guess Shae's background, assuming her mother was a prostitute, her father had abandoned them, and she was of low birth. However, he is mistaken on all accounts. Despite his inability to read Shae's true nature, he finds her all the more fascinating. When Shae begins to probe Tyrion about his past, Bronn reveals a surprising detail. Tyrion was once married. Reluctantly, Tyrion recounts a tale from his youth when he and Jaime stumbled upon a game named Tysha in Distress. While Jaime chased off the bandits, Tyrion confronted Tysha and they ended up spending the night together at an inn. It was the first time Tyrion felt desired and not just seen as an ugly dwarf. Eventually, Tyrion fell deeply in love with Tysha and even went as far as secretly marrying her with the help of a drunken septon. The tale of Tysha, as depicted in the books, differs slightly from that in the series. In the book, A Storm of Swords, Jaime discloses the truth to Tyrion regarding Tysha. She was not a prostitute, but rather a farmer's daughter they stumbled upon and rescued from a terrible fate. Tyrion encounters her at the age of 13, not 16. Tywin was furious upon discovering that Tyrion had wed a commoner, and decided to punish him by ordering Jaime to falsely claim that Tysha was a paid prostitute. Jaime regretted his role in this deception but felt powerless against his father's commands. Following her brutal assault by a group of soldiers, Tywin compels Tyrion to be the final perpetrator. Each of Tywin's men compensates Tysha with a silver coin, but Tyrion is instructed to present her with a gold coin, emphasizing the higher value placed on Lannisters. When Tyrion finally learns the truth about Tysha years later and how she was wronged at Tywin's behest, he vows to seek revenge against Jaime, Cersei, and their father. This significant plot twist was left out of the television adaptation, which is honestly such a bad decision. In the book, Tyrion, Bronn, and Shae abstain from partaking in the drinking game, as Tyrion reveals the story of Tysha to them individually. He had shared the tale of his first wife with Bronn during their time in the mountainous region of the Vale. However, he chooses to withhold this information from Shae until a later time. In the episode, Shae pointed out Tyrion's naivety in thinking a woman would be intimate with him so soon after a traumatic experience. As she became affectionate with Tyrion, Bronn exited the tent. At the request of Daenerys, Ser Jorah prepares himself for battle. He cautions her to leave immediately as Drogo's fate seems sealed, and his closest allies will soon vie for power, putting her son in grave danger. Despite the warning, Daenerys remains resolute in staying by her husband's side. Daenerys persuades Miri to employ blood magic in a desperate attempt to save him, but Daenerys doesn't understand the severity of the situation and what exactly she is sacrificing. Miri Maz Dur offers a solution to save Drogo, but demands a life in return. She performs a dark ritual using Drogo's stallion, causing a disturbance that unsettles the onlookers outside. Some of Drogo's loyal warriors view Daenerys' actions as meddling with forces beyond her control, leading to a violent confrontation in which Jorah intervenes to protect her. As the tension rises, Daenerys goes into labor, but is shunned by the Dothraki midwives who believe her to be cursed. With no other options, Jorah takes matters into his own hands and guides Daenerys into the tent, where the mysterious ceremony unfolds. The following day, the Lannister army awakens to the realization that the Starks have outmaneuvered them. They are caught off guard and must swiftly ready themselves for an impending attack. Tyrion delivers an impassioned speech to rally his Hill tribesmen, only to be suddenly struck unconscious by an inadvertent blow to the head from a warhammer. As chaos ensues and the battle begins, Tyrion is almost trampled before losing consciousness. Before coming to, Tyrion finds himself on a wagon with Bronn by his side. He learns that the Lannisters emerged victorious in the battle. However, Robb Stark had sent a fraction of his army to engage Tywin's forces as a distraction, allowing the main Stark army to advance towards Riverrun to take on Jaime Lannister's troops. In the book, Tyrion took part in the Battle of the Green Fork. There are slight deviations from the series. Gregor, the Mountain Clegane, takes command of the troops. Tyrion dons a mishmash of armor pieces from various suits, as his own tailored suit remains a Castle Rock. Tyrion plunges into the forefront of the fighting and surprisingly survives by skillfully besting numerous enemy soldiers on his own. He later informs his father that the plot to have him killed in the battle has been thwarted. Tywin confesses that he had actually anticipated Tyrion and the Hill tribesmen to flee and draw the Stark army into a trap. However, Tyrion's unexpected courage disrupted this scheme, leading to the retreat of the Starks instead. The producers initially intended to depict the battle, but constraints on time and budget in the first season led to the removal of the scene, resulting in Tyrion being knocked unconscious while the battle took place off-screen. The success of the first season led to a significant budget increase in subsequent seasons. Roose Bolton leads the Northern soldiers in the battle on the Green Fork in the book, but the commander remains unspecified in the show. In the book, a significant portion of the clansmen met their demise during the fierce battle on the Green Fork. Catelyn and Sir Roderick Castle stand amidst the trees, their ears tuned to the distant sound of battle. Suddenly, the triumphant return of Robb, accompanied by his guards and a captive Sir Jaime, shatter the quiet of the woodlands. The Battle of Whispering Wood has successfully lifted the siege of Riverrun, with Jaime's army now in ruins. Jaime proposes a swift end to the war through a one-on-one combat between himself and Robb, but the young Stark leader rejects the offer and instead chooses to have Jaime detained. Robb mourns the loss of 2,000 men due to a strategic diversion, but rallies his troops with a speech highlighting their significant victory and reminding them that the war is far from over. In the book, Robb dispatches the majority of his soldiers to the Green Fork, while in the television series, he only sends a small fraction, around 10% of the Northern Army to that location. Arya Stark finds herself struggling to survive on the unforgiving streets of the bustling city. Desperate for food, she manages to catch a pigeon, but is met with disappointment when her attempts to barter it for a mere slice of bread prove fruitless. As she navigates through the throngs of people, she learns that the hand of the king is being paraded toward the Great Sept of Baelor, the epicenter of religious reverence in the city. Overwhelmed by the possibility of seeing her father, Arya abandons the pigeon and immerses herself in the moving crowds. However, in the book version of the story, Arya brings the pigeon with her to the docks, where she stumbles upon the Wind Witch, the ship that her father had arranged to take her home to Winterfell. To her surprise, she notices men wearing Ned's colors aboard the ship and realizes that it's a dangerous trap. In the chaos of trying to escape, Arya loses the pigeon that was fastened to her belt. Hindered by her small stature, she clambers up the pedestal of a statue dedicated to Baelor, a revered Targaryen monarch after whom the sept is named. From her vantage point, she witnesses her father being led in chains towards the temple steps. Spotting Arya perched on the statue, Ned locks eyes with his daughter before being dragged further into the mob. Amidst the chaos, Yoren of the Night's Watch, who had previously crossed paths with Arya, he makes his way towards the statue where Arya stands. Ned is presented with an opportunity to admit to his alleged wrongdoings. He carefully considers his options, mindful of Arya and Sansa's presence, and ultimately decides to protect them by falsely confessing. He claims that Joffrey is the rightful ruler of the Iron Throne, which pleases the young king. Grand Maester Pycelle speaks of the value of mercy, and Joffrey contemplates the idea of sending Ned to the Night's Watch as a form of clemency, as suggested by his mother and pleaded for by Sansa. In the book, following Ned's coerced admission of guilt and his subsequent public execution at the Great Sept of Baelor, the High Septon delivers a poignant speech about the consequences of sin. He then turns to Joffrey seeking guidance on what should be done with Ned. However, in the television adaptation, it is Pycelle who delivers the speech and poses the question to the young king instead. However, Joffrey dismisses this notion, asserting that women are too soft and the acts of treason cannot go unpunished. He orders Sir Ilyn Payne to execute Ned by beheading him, causing an uproar among the onlookers. Arya attempts to intervene, drawing her sword in a desperate bid to save her father, but Yoren prevents her from reaching him, shielding her from witnessing his demise. Sansa cries out and is restrained by guards before fainting. Cersei and Varys make frantic efforts to convince Joffrey to reconsider his decision, but time runs out. Ned is forced to kneel before the statue, finding solace in the knowledge that Arya has been saved by Yoren. Sir Ilyn uses Ned's own sword, Ice, to swiftly decapitate him. A flock of pigeons take flight immediately after, signaling Arya that her father has been killed. Ned Stark's execution in the television show differs slightly from the way it was depicted in the book. One significant difference is that in the show, Ned spots his daughter Arya in the crowd and instructs Yoren to rescue her. This act of saving Arya ultimately becomes his final act before his own demise. However, in the book, Ned is unaware of Arya's presence, and it is Yoren who notices her and takes action. Yoren later reveals to Arya that he had delayed his departure from King's Landing because Varys had informed him that Ned was to be shown mercy and would require assistance in traveling to the Wall. Another interesting point is that neither Arya nor the reader actually witnesses Ned's beheading in the book. During an interview in March of 2018, Sean Bean disclosed that as Ned met his demise, he quietly uttered a prayer to himself. In the scene where he is being beheaded, he can be seen silently mouthing words that had previously been shrouded in mystery. Ned's life and death closely mirrored that of William Hastings, a prominent figure in the War of the Roses, which served as the inspiration for George R.R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire novels. Hastings was a close confidant of King Edward IV, who had overthrown the previous monarch, Henry VI, known for his periods of madness similar to the Mad King Ares II. Hastings held the position of King's Chamberlain and governed significant territories in England on behalf of the king. After Edward's passing, his wife Elizabeth attempted to secure the throne for their son Edward V, much like Cersei's actions in the books. However, Hastings backed Edward's younger brother Richard III, who had been appointed Lord Protector, leading to Edward V's coronation being thwarted. Despite his loyalty, Richard III had Hastings swiftly executed by beheading, claiming that Hastings was plotting against him with Elizabeth's family. In the book, following the execution, Slint raises Ned's bloodied head by his hair. This scene is not depicted directly, but is instead unveiled through Cersei's flashback as she undertakes the Walk of Atonement. The title of the episode, Baelor, is inspired by the Great Sept of Baelor, the primary place of worship in King's Landing, where the crucial event of Ned Stark's execution unfolds. The episode's title, Fire and Blood, marks the second time an episode title has been derived from a house motto, the first being Winter is Coming. In the Grand Sept of Baelor, Eddard Stark has met his demise as Sandor Clegane, alongside Sir Ilyn Payne, the appointed royal executioner, proudly displays Lord Eddard's severed head to the roaring crowd. The shock of the brutal execution causes Sansa Stark to collapse in a faint. Sean Bean, who plays Ned Stark, is still the highest paid cast member in this episode, despite his absence from the scene. Only a lifeless replica of his head is visible. Amidst the chaos, Yoren intervenes, forcibly removing Arya from the tumultuous scene while referring to her as a boy. Once they are out of sight, Yoren swiftly shears Arya's long locks with a sharp blade. He reassures her that he would escort her safely away from King's Landing and towards Winterfell as a member of the Night's Watch. However, he cautions her to be wary of her fellow recruits, as some would betray her to Cersei for a pardon, while others would subject her to unspeakable horrors before doing the same. In the book, Yoren informs Arya that the individual responsible for bringing Gendry to him was Varys, who also instructed him to postpone their departure and meet at the Sept of Baelor. This was because Eddard's trial was expected to end with him being sent to the Wall to join the Night's Watch, and Yoren would be taking him there. In Winterfell, Bran experiences another vivid dream involving the mystical three-eyed raven. Upon waking, he confides in Osha, explaining how the dream always culminates with the raven descending into the crypts beneath the castle, leading him to believe his father may be there. Osha accompanies Bran as they venture into the crypts, where she shares the tales of their ancestors laid to rest within. This exploration is interrupted by the sudden appearance of Shaggy Dog, Rickon's fierce direwolf, who startles them from the unoccupied tomb designated for Eddard Stark. Rickon calms Shaggy Dog and reveals that he too had the same prophetic dream as Bran. As they exit the crypts, Osha attempts to dismiss the eerie occurrences as mere coincidences, but their encounter with Maester Luwin bearing a somber expression and a letter confirms the tragic news of Eddard's demise. In the story, it is Luwin who accompanies Bran to the underground crypts of Winterfell, not Osha. During their visit, Shaggy Dog unexpectedly bites Luwin. After the incident, Bran and Rickon return with Luwin to his tower. They are all present when a raven brings the news of their father's passing. At that moment, the wolves start howling and Rickon breaks down in tears even before the arrival of the raven. At the Stark family camp, Catelyn Stark walks with quiet determination through the cluster of tents and receives the condolences and reverence of the loyal Northern Bannermen, who lower their heads in respect as she moves past them. She navigates her way into the dense woods surrounding the encampment. As soon as she is shielded from prying eyes, she collapses, overcome with sorrow and gasping for breath. A noise from further within the forest catches her attention, leading her to discover her son Robb venting his anger and grief by fiercely striking his sword against a tree. Catelyn calls out to him, gently pointing out the harm he is causing to his weapon. Robb drops the sword and collapses into his mother's embrace, pledging to avenge his father's murder by the Lannisters. Catelyn consoles him and assures him that justice will be served, but only after they secure the safety of Sansa and Arya. With his father's death, Robb officially becomes Lord of Winterfell, taking his father's place. Joffrey presides over his court, where a minstrel is brought forth for composing a song that mocks King Robert and Queen Cersei. The song suggests that the boar may have killed Robert, but the lion in his bed had emasculated him beforehand. The minstrel is revealed to be Marillion, whom Catelyn and Sir Roderick had encountered at the Inn of the Crossroads, and who had travelled with them and Tyrion to the Vale of Arryn. Joffrey gives Marillion a cruel choice, to keep his hands or his tongue. Terrified, Marillion chooses to keep his hands, so Joffrey orders Ilyn Payne to cut out his tongue. In the book, the musician who faces trial and punishment from Joffrey is not Marillion. Instead, it is an unidentified, overweight tavern singer. Marillion does make an appearance in the later books at the Eyrie, but never in King's Landing. However, the fate of Marillion in the show is reminiscent of his character in the novels. He is wrongly accused of a murder, Lysa in the books, subjected to brutal torture, and ends up losing his eyes and 3 fingers. In the book, prior to Joffrey ordering Sansa to witness Eddard's execution alongside him, he is seen dealing with various disputes and matters with the small council. He delegates 9 out of 10 cases to the council, showing disinterest in them, and decides on the remaining cases himself in a stubborn manner. Joffrey then takes Sansa to the walls to show off her father's head on a spike. He is taunting her by promising to give her Robb's head next. Sansa responds calmly that Robb might offer Joffrey's head in return. Enraged, Joffrey instructs Sir Meryn Trant to strike Sansa, citing Cersei's advice that a king should not strike his queen. As Sansa appears to move towards Joffrey with a vengeful intent, Sandor Clegane unexpectedly intervenes, wiping blood off her lip and advising her to comply with Joffrey's wishes after he departs. Even though it was hardly noticeable, one of the decapitated heads displayed on the walls of the Red Keep by Joffrey turned out to be a likeness of the former US President George W. Bush. The production team clarified that it was not meant as a political statement, but rather a mistake as they had received a prop from another film set. During a meeting at Robb's camp, Robb and his allies discussed whether to align themselves with Stannis or Renly Baratheon in the ongoing war against King Joffrey. While Renly may have a larger army, Stannis is the older Baratheon brother and the rightful heir to the throne after Cersei's children. Greatjon Umber challenges the notion of Northerners being dictated by Southern rulers, highlighting the North's history of independence before the Targaryens imposed their authority with dragons. With the dragons no longer a threat, Umber proclaims his loyalty to Robb as the one true king, declaring him the king in the North. The rest of the Northern Bannermen echo this sentiment, pledging their allegiance to Robb and bowing before him as their new ruler. In a heated discussion regarding the differences between the people of the North and South, Greatjon Umber expresses disdain towards the beliefs of Southerners, suggesting that their gods are misguided. Jaime Lannister later belittles the tree gods worshipped by the Northmen, highlighting the deep-seated animosity between the two regions, largely fueled by the contrasting religious practices. Catelyn pays a visit to the imprisoned Jaime Lannister, who cruelly mocks her about the death of Ned and makes a suggestive offer to become her lover. In a fit of rage, she strikes him on the head with a stone. Jaime calmly remarks that if she continues to strike him, she may succeed in killing him, claiming that he does not fear death. However, he seems to be aware that the Starks will not execute him as long as his sister holds Sansa and Arya captive. Catelyn admonishes Jaime for his transgressions against both the laws of man and the gods, to which he retorts by questioning the presence of any gods, old or new, when Ned met his demise. She argues that injustice exists in the world because of individuals like him, to which Jaime arrogantly responds with, "There are no others like me. Only me." He confesses to being responsible for pushing Bran from the tower, but remains silent on the reasons behind his actions. In the book, Catelyn remains unaware that Bran's fall was no mere accident. It is only when she discovers the truth from Stannis regarding the illicit affair between Jaime and Cersei that she finally pieces together the puzzle of Bran's mysterious fall. In the novel, Catelyn refrains from physically attacking Jaime. The interaction between Catelyn and the captive Jaime is inspired by a similar encounter at the end of A Clash of Kings, which we see in Season 2's A Man Without Honor, where she visits Jaime alongside Brienne. The conversation shown in this episode is just a snippet of their entire discussion and omits Jaime's provocative remark about Bran. "I rarely toss children off towers to make them better. Yes, I wanted him dead." Jaime finds himself confined in a tower cell within Riverrun rather than being placed in a pen at Robb's camp. Initially, he is not restrained by shackles. However, after a failed attempt to flee, he is eventually kept in captivity with his limbs bound in a dark dungeon. Cersei Lannister has found a new romantic partner in her cousin Lancel, who previously served as King Robert's squire. In addition to this, she receives a message notifying her of Jaime's imprisonment. Lancel finds himself in Cersei's bedroom without any clothes on. The prospect of being involved in a war thrills him, especially since he has recently been knighted. Eager for updates on the ongoing conflict, he asks about the next course of action. However, Cersei silences him and instructs him to return to bed. Cersei chooses to sleep with Lancel because he is someone she can control, and he'll do everything that she wants. In the Lannister camp, Lord Tywin is convening a strategic meeting with his generals, expressing his anger over Jaime's capture by the Starks at Whispering Wood. Tywin's brother, Kevin, labels the ongoing war as a catastrophe, with Jaime's defeat being just one of many setbacks faced by the Lannisters. The situation is further complicated by the claims to the Iron Throne made by both Stannis and Renly, resulting in Lannisters being engaged in a three-front war against the Starks in the north and the Baratheon forces in the south. Kevin and other commanders are deliberating on the best course of action, debating whether to launch an attack, retreat and gather reinforcements, or seek peace. Tyrion highlights the futility of negotiating with Robb Stark following the execution of his father Eddard. With the Lannister army vulnerable, Tywin decides to withdraw to Harrenhal, a formidable fortress located on the northern shores of God's Eye, to regroup and plan their next moves. Impressed by Tyrion's keen insight, Tywin appoints his son as the acting hand of the king in his absence, tasking him with overseeing Cersei and Joffrey to prevent further blunders. Additionally, Tyrion is instructed to eliminate any perceived traitors such as Baelish, Varys, and Pycelle. Tywin also demands that Tyrion leave his lover behind, much to Tyrion's dismay. Later in the tent, Tyrion vents his frustrations about his father to Shae, and ultimately decides to defy Tywin's orders by bringing Shae to court with him. In the book, Tywin expresses his fury not only over Ned's execution, but also regarding other foolish actions of Joffrey. For instance, granting Janos Slynt the prestigious title of Lord of Harrenhal is seen as a grave insult by Tywin. He views it as disrespectful that a castle with such historical significance once belonged to kings is now bestowed upon the son of a common butcher. Additionally, Tywin is deeply disappointed by the decision to dismiss Sir Barristan Selmy as the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard. Despite his age, Sir Barristan's reputation and legacy in the realm hold great value, bringing honor to any man he serves. This stands in stark contrast to the Hound, who lack the same level of respect and integrity. Furthermore, Tywin is appalled by the appointment of the Hound to the Kingsguard, as he is neither a knight nor willing to be anointed as one. In the desolate lands beyond Lazar, Daenerys awakens to the devastating news delivered by Ser Jorah Mormont. Her newborn son has tragically passed away. The child was born lifeless and disfigured, his body covered in scales. To add to her grief, the majority of the Khalasar have abandoned them, moving on without a second thought. Despite this bleak situation, Drogo, her husband, still clings to life. Determined to see Drogo, Daenerys discovers him in a state of complete immobility. Desperate for answers, she demands an explanation from Mirri Mez Dur. The healer reveals the harsh truth that when Daenerys intervened to save her, she had already endured multiple assaults and witnessed the destruction of her sacred temple by the Dothraki. The barbarians had ravaged her village, pillaging and enslaving its inhabitants. Seeking vengeance, Dur orchestrated the demise of Drogo and Daenerys' unborn child, Rhaego. With this act, she ensured that Daenerys' mighty stallion, destined to conquer cities and vanquish foes, would never fulfill its destiny. Although Dur acknowledges that Daenerys spared her life, she questions the worth of existence when everything else has been stripped away. Jon Snow receives the heartbreaking news of his father's passing. Despite Samwell's insistence that he stay and uphold his commitments, Jon swiftly mounts a horse and makes preparations to join Robb's army. As he sets out for Castle Black, he is followed by a group of pursuers. In the chaos of the chase, one of them is thrown from his horse after colliding with a tree branch, revealing himself to be Sam. Jon, recognizing his friend's flight, turns back to assist him. Joining Sam are Grenn and Piper, who refuse to abandon Jon. They remind him of the sacred vows they all swore to the Night's Watch, compelling Jon to reconsider his decision. The realization draws upon him that leaving would mean betraying his oath and dishonoring his late father's memory. Uncertain of Robb's reaction, Jon grapples with the consequences of his choices. Ultimately, Jon resolves to accompany his companions back to the Wall, acknowledging the gravity of his duty and the weight of his loyalties. In the novel, Sam opts out of accompanying Grenn and Pip on their journey to pursue Jon, who is abandoning his post at the Night's Watch. Sam informs the group, and 7 new members volunteer to join the pursuit. Ghost inadvertently reveals Jon's whereabouts, which makes people think that Bloodraven was controlling the direwolf or a time-traveling Bran. Daenerys leads Drogo into their tent, pleading with him to stay with her in every possible manner. However, after a while, she is forced to acknowledge that her efforts are in vain. There is no response from him. Overwhelmed with grief, she presses a pillow over his face, tears streaming down her cheeks as she watches his body's final feeble moments. In the book, it is revealed that Drogo, while still being able to move and consume food, has lost his sight, hearing, and sense of touch, with the exception of detecting warmth. Grand Maester Pycelle invites the courtesan Ross to his chambers, where he regales her with tales of the powerful kings he has served. He mourns the tragic downfall of Aerys Targaryen, who transformed from a charming young man into a deranged lunatic fixated on fire. Pycelle also reflects on Robert Baratheon, acknowledging his prowess as a soldier, but questioning his suitability as a ruler. Despite his reservations, Pycelle reaffirms his unwavering loyalty to King Joffrey. Once Ross departs, Pycelle rises from his bed and stretches, revealing a surprising agility that contradicts his frail facade. He readjusts his appearance before exiting his chambers, seamlessly slipping back into his role as the aged and feeble Grand Maester. The Order of Maesters is meant to be a fair and impartial organization where individuals are required to sever any connections to their family and political backgrounds, relinquish any claims to inheritance, and vow to remain celibate. However, if you read the books carefully enough, you'll soon realize that they are the most dangerous conspiracy in Westeros. Littlefinger and Varys engage in conversation in the presence of the majestic Iron Throne. Varys asks about Littlefinger's aspiration of claiming the throne for himself. Littlefinger, in turn, redirects the question back to Varys, prompting Varys to reveal that he is one of the few individuals in the city who harbors no desire for kingship. Littlefinger jests that Varys is not truly a man, alluding to his status as a eunuch, and humorously questions whether both his pillar and stones were removed. Their dialogue is cut short by the arrival of Joffrey, who inquires if they are prepared to commence a small council meeting. The Iron Throne is said to house 1,000 swords, each one taken from the defeated enemies of Aegon the Conqueror. Yoren has gathered a group of fresh recruits for the Night's Watch. Arya, disguised as a boy named Eri, joins the band. Along with her are Hot Pie, Lomi Greenhands, and Gendry, who is unaware that he is the illegitimate son of King Robert. Gendry used to work for Tobio Moat, but after Robert's death, the secret payments to Mott ceased, leading to Gendry's dismissal and his recruitment into the Night's Watch. Hot Pie and Lomi attempt to intimidate Arya into surrendering her sword, Needle. However, Arya defiantly brandishes the weapon, reminding them that she has already killed one hefty boy and is willing to do it again. Gendry intervenes, siding with Arya and warning the others against harassing her. Now Yoren must lead the group on a perilous journey to the Wall, which is 1,000 leagues away. Traversing the strife-ridden riverlands, their adventure begins. In the book, the altercation between Arya and Hot Pie is depicted as extremely brutal. Arya inflicts a broken nose upon Hot Pie, and when she shifts her attention to Lomi, Hot Pie retaliates by striking her with a sharp-edged rock. Arya continues to pummel Hot Pie until he ultimately loses control of his bodily functions. Also, in the book, this altercation occurs while they are on their journey, not in the streets of King's Landing. In the book, Gendry refrains from getting involved in a fight. Instead, he advises Lomi and Hot Pie to cease bothering Arya. Lord Commander Jorah Mormont decides to forgive Jon for his brief desertion, acknowledging that many have abandoned the Wall only to return later. He explains that if he were going to punish everyone who ran away, they would be left with very few men. Mormont emphasizes to Jon that the ongoing war between the Lannisters and Starks is not as crucial as the imminent threat posed by the Wildlings, White Walkers, and Whites. He plans to lead the Night's Watch deep into the haunted forest to gather intelligence on their enemies, prepare for battle, and search for the missing Benjen Stark. Jon agrees to fully dedicate himself to the Night's Watch and the challenges that lie ahead. In the north, there is a notable woman among the noble lords, believed to be Mage Mormont, portrayed by Elizabeth Barrett. While the other noble families are headed by men, Mage assumed leadership of House Mormont and their historic residence on Bear Island after her brother, Jorah Mormont, took the Black, and his son, Jorah Mormont, was banished to Essos for his involvement in slave trading. Daenerys and her small group prepare a funeral pyre for Drogo. She addresses the remaining few followers, giving them the choice to leave, or stay with her for a promising future. She releases the slaves among them and encourages them to stay as equals. The Magi smirks as some choose to walk away. Following Daenerys' orders, Rhaenyra places the dragon eggs on the pyre, and Mirri Maz Duur is tied to a pillar. Mirri Maz Duur defiantly tells Daenerys she will not scream as she is burnt alive. Daenerys declares she only seeks the Magi's life, despite Ser Jorah's attempts to dissuade her otherwise, suggesting they sell the eggs and flee. Daenerys kisses his cheek, sets the pyre ablaze, and walks into the flames. Mirri Maz Duur screams as she burns, while Daenerys remains composed beneath the engulfing fire. In the book, Daenerys walks into the flame of the pyre, and everything happens on that very same night. However, in the TV series, the scene transitions to the next morning. As the first light of day breaks, the flames from the fire begin to fade. Jorah and the rest of the Khalasar awaken to a mesmerizing sight. Daenerys is seated amidst the dying embers, with 3 newly hatched baby dragons playfully moving around her. Her garments have been consumed by the fire, leaving her body covered in ash, yet she remains unscathed. One dragon nestles in her embrace, another clambers up her leg, and the third perches itself on her shoulder. Witnessing the miraculous rebirth of these legendary creatures, a stunned Jorah and the remaining Dothraki warriors kneel before Daenerys, pledging their loyalty to the Mother of Dragons. As she slowly rises to her feet, the black dragon on her shoulder unfurls its wings and lets out a piercing cry, heralding the triumphant return of dragons to the realm. In the books, Daenerys is discovered amidst the ashes of a raging fire, where she is feeding her dragons with their mother's milk. This occurrence takes place as she carries a child within her. Despite the intense flames, her skin remains unscathed, but her hair is completely consumed by the fire. In the books, just before Daenerys enters the fiery pyre, she requests Rhaenyra, Jogo, and Ago to become her blood riders and appoints them as her trusted companions. However, the 3 men initially declined, citing the Dothraki tradition that only a man can lead a Khalasar and have blood riders, while she is a Khaleesi. They agree only to escort her safely back to Vaes Dothrak and protect her until she joins the Dosh Khaleen there. Yet, after she emerges unscathed from the flames with 3 newly hatched dragons, the warriors acknowledge her as their own kin, blood of my blood. These significant events were left out of the television adaptation. Daenerys' dragons were born in the year 298 after the Targaryen conquest, making them the first live dragons in almost 150 years. The last dragon perished during King Aegon III's rule in 153. Prior to the events of the show, Daenerys' grandfather, Aegon V, made an unsuccessful attempt to hatch the final 3 dragon eggs in Westeros. This endeavor resulted in a tragic fire at his summer palace, leading to the deaths of Aegon and his eldest son, Duncan. This incident, known as the Tragedy at Summerhall, marked the beginning of Aerys' reign, who was Daenerys' father and later became known as the Mad King. Rhaegar was also born the same night as the Tragedy of Summerhall. Her attendants and female slaves remained by her side. They had been taken captive or acquired and assimilated into the Dothraki tribe. Did you know in the books, Robert nearly killed Joffrey as a boy? In Davos 6, we learn from Stannis that Joffrey butchered a cat. Stannis says, "Joffrey, I remember once, this kitchen cat. The cooks were wont to feed her scraps and fish heads. One told the boy that she had kittens in her belly, thinking he might want one. Joffrey opened up the poor thing with a dagger to see if it were true. When he found the kittens, he brought them to show his father. Robert hit the boy so hard, I thought he'd killed him." After this, Cersei threatened to kill Robert in his sleep if he ever struck Joffrey again, so he never did. But at the same time, it's clear in the books that Robert never got over it or forgave Joffrey. Did you know in the books, Robert Baratheon confessed to Ned that he knew his son was a monster. During the Hands tourney, when the two of them are alone, Robert tells Ned, "I am sorry for your girl, Ned. Truly, about the wolf I mean. My son was lying, I'd stake my soul on it." Robert even admits he wants to give up the throne and become a sellsword in the Free Cities. However, the thought of Joffrey on the throne with Cersei whispering in his ear stops him. He says, "My son, how could I have made a son like that, Ned?"